snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on Bob.
Good evening, everybody, and Merry Christmas. Rob and I won't be going live tonight or next week for Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, but we decided that we're going to go back to the very beginning. And tonight we're going to play back my original interview with John and Eric on New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast. And next week we'll do the same with Rob's. So for myself and Rob and everybody in the Finest Unfiltered family, I want to wish you a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, a happy Kwanzaa, and just the happiest of all holidays, whatever you're celebrating. And for all those members of the service and other first responders that are out there having to work on these holidays, special prayer for you. Thank you. Watch your backs. Be safe. We really appreciate that all you've done for us here at the Executive Perspective to bring us to where we are. We never thought that we'd be having this much fun and have so much of you on for the ride. So once again, happy holidays. God bless. And we'll see you in 2026.
You'll take the lead. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Oh, jingle bells and jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one.
All right, everybody. We got Inspector Ron Leyson, recently retired from the NYPD. Full disclosure here, Ron Leyson was my boss's boss, so I know him well. Great leader. He's got a great story to tell. We're going to memorialize his career. So let's just get right into it. Let's have some fun. This is a question I never knew. I knew you just as an executive. So tell me why you became a cop.
Hey, how you doing, guys? Good to be on the show finally. I know we've been talking about it, and I've been along with you guys, I think, from pretty much the beginning of the ride when Eric first did his interview with you before he joined as a partnership. And, we've been in contact ever since. And I'm glad to finally be here with you guys. Why did I become a cop? Listen, this, is the answer, I wanted to go out there and protect and serve and everything else. Listen, I got on when I was late. I got on when I was 26 years old. So I was a late bloomer, especially back in the early 90s. A lot of young cops, young guys, big classes of cops going in. I got in during the Safe Streets era. And, basically at the time, I was working at a St. Vinny's Hospital on the bus. I was teaching an EMT class. I knew a whole bunch of cops. I was friends with a whole bunch of cops. I was working midnights. So you get to spend a little extra time with guys and you get closer because there's less people out there. I always liked midnights. I actually played softball with the 120 team when I was working on the bus. So I got to know a lot of the cops, became friendly with a bunch of cops. And one of my friends was like, hey, why don't you take the test? I never thought about it. And to be perfectly honest with you, at the time, I didn't have a high school diploma. I dropped out of high school. A lot of people don't know that. They don't realize that because they're always an executive and everything else. But yeah, I dropped out of high school early and, got by, went and got my EMT license, got my license to teach EMT because the state didn't require a high school diploma to do that. And so I was teaching the course. So I knew I was going to have to get my high school diploma because back then you didn't need a 2-year degree or 2 years of college or any military. So I went and I signed up for the test and, hey, timing is everything, right? And, things happen and it's funny. And throughout my career, it's come up where timing has come to play where, if you do A, B's not going to happen. And so I signed up for the test and whatever the date of the test was. And the tests weren't coming out that often. Like now they're constant. They have tests that go for months. You just walk in. You don't even have to sign up ahead of time. You could just walk in and take the test. But back then, it's like, it took years to get on the job, and the tests weren't that often. So I signed up for the test. And I'm friends with some cops. And one night we were out having a couple of cocktails, and one of my friends says to me, he goes, "Hey, me and my buddy, we're going to Jamaica on X and X date. Why don't you come?" No hesitation. I'm there. Single guy, live on my own. I'm there. Here's my travel agent. That's how far back we're going. We're going back to 1990, right? Here's my travel agent. Go. She'll set you up. She'll hook you up. I go. I set up the trip. 7 days in Jamaica, and come to find out, after all's paid for and everything's going, I'm like, wait a second. The first day of the trip is the day of my police exam. So now I'm a young guy. I'm like, I'm gonna miss out on a trip to Jamaica. I'll take the next test or whatever. And then I realized, this test don't come around that often. What do I do? So I actually went and canceled the first day of my test, the first day of my trip, in order to take the police exam. And the next day I flew out and met them in Jamaica. So had I not made that decision, my whole trajectory has changed, right? Because I don't make that test. I don't make that list. I don't get hired when I get hired. So fast forward, 3 years later, 1993. Little funny caveat. I can laugh at myself now, and to try and make it easier. And this was before like legitimate homeschooling and everything else. There was a Sally Struthers homeschool for your GED. So it says it's accredited, the whole 9 yards. I go through this whole course, legitimate stuff. They send you the package. You got to do the work. You got to send it back. It gets graded, the whole 9 yards. I graduate, get my, diploma. Now it's like 3 months before the academy class is supposed to go in. I go to my investigator. Oh, we don't accept that. It's not accredited in New York. Like, oh, crap. So now I got to sign up real quick, go take the GED. I take the GED exam. I pass the GED exam, so I'm able to get on the job. I get on the job August of 93. I go in the academy, the old police academy, and over 3,000 guys sworn in at Brooklyn College. 3,000. Could you imagine a class of 3,000 today? 3,000. And we were doing, 2,500, 3,000 every 6 months for like a few years. So it was huge classes, huge classes. So my class graduated, over 2,800 people in the end. Over 28 people graduated my academy class. So I go through the academy, and again, I'm the older guy in the class. I've had all these friends that were cops. I'm not impressed by the instructor. It annoys the crap out of me. I got to come to attention for a cop. Like, who are these cops that you got to come to attention because you're a recruit, and they're just a police officer. But whatever, you do what you have to do. But I would talk to them, because how many cops do I have that are friends? They're just cops. They're just people. I talk to them. So people were like, didn't know what to think of me, But anyway, we get through the academy. I get assigned to the 7-0 precinct in Flatbush in Kensington. Tough place, especially in the early 90s. You're talking about, getting out of the academy in early 94. And we had 50 people in my FTU. So it was a big class. So basically, foot posts all along Flatbush Avenue, all down Flatbush Avenue, Flatbush and Church. Just mayhem. But good cops working there. Great cops. There was over 300 cops in that command at the time. Something that you'll probably never see, but good cops, senior cops that treated you like a rookie, but taught you like a senior cop should. So I think I got a good foundation there, a ton of bosses, some good, some not so good, just like everywhere else.
Ron, sorry to cut you off, but where'd you grow up? Like, what, we went right into you joining the academy, but where'd you grow up as a kid?
I grew up out on Staten Island.
Oh, so you grew up in Staten Island. So kind of familiar. So you're familiar with Brooklyn, like 7-0, all that area. Not that you're hanging out there, but so other than the fact of becoming a cop, was it a culture shock for you being in a 7-0?
Was it a culture shock? I mean, no. I'll tell you why. Because when I worked EMS, I worked on the North Shore on the 120. So I was in Mariners Harbor. I was in West Brighton, New Brighton, so I saw, the worst of humanity at times, from the EMS side of it, from the violence side of it, the EDP side of it. So I had already had that for quite a few years before I did that. So, it's not, obviously the two aren't the same, but you do a lot of the same things on the job, and you experience a lot of the same things when you work in EMS as you do when you're a cop. You're there for, a different role, but you're still at the same scene. So I wouldn't say I had the culture shock because I had worked in the areas. More of a culture shock, to be honest with you, was the Jewish area of the 7-0, because you go south of Forster, and it's highly Jewish, and you learn that on the Sabbath you may get flagged down, and they may ask you to come in and turn their lights off, as because they're not allowed to touch electronics and stuff like that, and then there's sometimes you got, I hadn't personally seen it, but I know of a cop that, had a big issue having a collar, and they're not supposed to get in the police car, and so, the rabbis had to get involved with the borough, and, just that was more of a culture shock to me, because I hadn't experienced much of that than the lower economic end of the 7-0, where the violence was, where the the criminals and everything else were. So that wasn't really a culture shock to me because of my experience with EMS.
I think it's quite interesting, right? Here we are. All three of us have a lot of commonalities. We were all New York City kids. We all spent a good time living on Staten Island. Became blue-collar workers, became cops. But at the same token, we all have interesting stories where we didn't intend to become cops. I never saw myself becoming a cop. I thought I'd stay in the military. You obviously had a different path. John says the same thing. So it's quite interesting how we all found the police force.
Yeah.
Before I go and segue to the next question, I just want to ask, did you come from a deity of cops or military?
No.
Were you the first of the family to become a cop?
No. First in the family to be a cop. My father spent a little time in the Air Force. My grandfather has quite the story. He was a World War I fighter pilot, captured by the Germans, escaped. He's written 20 some odd books. He died just before I was born. And actually, One of the books he wrote was on the NYPD. So I used to have that book up on a shelf in my office. But no law enforcement whatsoever. I grew up very impoverished. Not an easy upbringing. But was living on my own by choice since I was 18 years old. My parents moved out of state, and they said, "Yeah, you're more than welcome to come, or you can stay." So I had to grow up quick and do my thing. But no,
we all had very similar upbringings. It's interesting how we all grew up impoverished. New York City, in Staten Island, didn't intend to become cops. So, what were your expectations? Obviously, you're out there doing EMS work, so you have exposure. Right. You're working with cops on a different side of things. So, what was your expectations though of becoming a police officer and becoming a cop? And at least, what was your expectations for you?
Yeah, well, my total goal was to be ESU. When I got on the job, because of my EMS time and working all the pin jobs and the barricaded jobs and everything else with the ESU guys down in Truck 5 and Truck 6 that used to come over the bridge, I wanted to be an ESU cop. I had friends that were ESU cops. I had a lot of friends that were ESU cops, and that was my thing. I wanted to be an E-man, and I like to help people. And what they say, emergency services, right? When the public needs help, they call the police. When the police need help, they call the ESU. So that was my ambition. That was what I wanted to do. Knew nobody on this job. No, like I said, first generation. Didn't know any bosses on the job. Nothing. So I'm just coming on cold, and that was going to be my goal. But 3 years, less than 3 years into the job, the sergeant's test was coming out. And you had to have, when I took the test, you had to have 3 years on the job to take the test. And you couldn't get promoted until you had 5 years on the job. So a bunch of us said, yeah, let's take the test. Let's take the test. Now, remember, I'm Mr. GED. I'm not Mr. Scholar. I'm not Mr. I don't like books. I don't like school. I don't like studying, But I said, all right, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I studied, and there was a few of us studying hard, going to the class. I was doing pretty well. And for those who don't understand about studying for an NYPD promotional exam, it's just rote memory. It really is. It's policy procedure. There's no oral exam anymore. That was years ago, too subjective. So it's just rote memory of reading these procedures. And it's painstaking. You have to literally give up 6 to 8 months of your life if you really wanted to be competitive. And that was back in the day before, where they took the top, they would tell you, all right, we're going to take the top 1,750 plus ties. So, when my test, I think 81 was passing, not 70 like it is now. I think 81, because they go down. They say, all right, how many we can get until we get to that 1,750, and it's all right, 81, and then so it's ties. So it's like the list winds up being 1,800 and change. But that's how competitive it was. So there was a few of us that would really study, and we'd have little study groups or whatever, take our meals together. And I took an inside job for a little while, for like 5 months or so, as an arrest processing officer when they started up the video arrest processing in Brooklyn South. And just to get some extra study time when there was no college, which didn't work out too good because the 7-0 was pretty busy with college, So, the best laid plans of mice and men didn't work out so great, but I did get some time. Because there was 2 of us, so we'd take breaks and take turns. But I would study. It got to the point where I would study. I'd get up in the morning, I'd study for like 4 hours before I went into work. I worked 4 to 12s, and then I'd come home and I'd study. Whereas before that, I was doing what we used to call 4 to 4s. Right? You do the 4 to 12, and then after work, you go out to the bar, closes at 4 a.m. and you're hanging out with your friends. So I stopped that completely, going out, and just dedicated the 6 to 7 months to study my butt off. And I did really well. I did really well. I passed the exam, and I was in the top of the exam, and but I couldn't get promoted now until I had 5 years on the job. And now it's 4 years, but it used to be 5 years. So I had 2 years, of time from the time I took the test, because it was perfect timing, because the class after me that went in March of 1994 wasn't eligible for the exam. So I just made the eligibility. There again, if I would have went to Jamaica, I never would have made the promotional exam, right? So I do really well, and now I got a year and a half. By the time the list comes out, because it's like 6 months before the list comes out. So the list comes out, and a lot of us from my class did really well. We had just about 18 months before we can get promoted, before we're eligible for that 5-year anniversary. So what the job did, and this was my first experience of the job doing what's best for the job and not really, taking into consideration the wants and needs of the members. They took 300 of us and forced us into narcotics in groups, large groups, because we have no say, right? So what are we going to do about it? So they transfer us into narcotics. So I never wanted to be in narcotics. There was plenty of people that put in for narcotics that wanted to be in narcotics. I didn't want to be in narcotics. So we go to the Brooklyn Army Terminal, where they had the classes for the narcotics investigators. And we're all sitting there, and it's just all of us, and we're miserable. And I got to, if anybody that was ever an instructor there, I got to apologize, because we were disrespectful. We were just weren't paying attention. We were so detached and so annoyed that we were there. The funny thing is, 3 days or 4 days into it, we start getting pulled out of the class and go over into the supervisor's building. Okay. We sit down in front of a board of executives. And the first question is, Officer Leyson, why do you want to come to narcotics? Well, I don't want to come to narcotics. I don't want nothing to do with being here. I did what the job said to do. I busted my ass. I studied. I passed the exam. And because I did so well, and I can't get promoted for a certain amount of time, I got put into a position now where I feel that I am at a higher risk of having an allegation placed against me that may hold me up for my promotion. So I didn't put out, you don't have an application in front of you from me. I didn't. They did not like that too much. you know. And again, that's maybe because I was older and I wasn't intimidated, and I'm going to speak my mind. And speaking my mind's gotten me in plenty of trouble on this job, trust me. But you know, having a filter has not been something I've been accused of very often until later in my career. But you know, they basically sent me back to the trailer and told me, let me tell you, when you go to your command, wherever you go, if you don't do what's expected of you, you're going to get a negative evaluation and you're not going to get promoted. Have a good day, officer. And back to the trailer I went. You know, and luckily I had somebody I had known, one of my friends was in narcotics that knew somebody, because it's not always who you know. So a lot of times who you know that knows somebody. So I was able to get a decent spot in Brooklyn North, but it was in the 9094 module. So it was like the slowest, you know, module in Brooklyn North. I did my time and got through it, and then got promoted in 98 to sergeant. And again, not really knowing anybody, and I just went wherever, you know, you get your dream sheet, which, you know, is what it is. I wound up in the 7-8 precinct in you know, in Brooklyn. So it was a good spot. I enjoyed it. That was in 1998. I walk in the door there. Okay.
What tour? What did you get on as a sergeant? Like,
when I first got there, I was just going to get into it. When I first got there, the CO brings me in, coming from narcotics. What do you think about being the crime sergeant? I go, how many sergeants you got here? Like 28 sergeants. I said, no, I don't know if I'm interested in that. You got 20. I'm sergeant 28 in seniority out of 28, and you're asking me if I want to be the crime sergeant? Something is wrong with this picture, you know, that nobody else wants to be the crime sergeant. That's like a prestigious spot. That's something that people strive for, like, you know. So like, all right, well, we're going to have you cover the team until we can find somebody. Okay. So I cover anti-crime for a little while, and then go on the 4 to 12s. And then a little while into it, I become the FTU sergeant, which is probably my most enjoyable position as a sergeant. Very small group of 5 cops. Unfortunately, one got terminated. He was probably the best cop in my group, but he made a silly mistake. You know, he's at his buddy's house. He has to go to the bathroom. He takes his gun off and leaves it on the counter. His friend lets a round go. Failure to safeguard his gun on probation, terminated. You know, and the other 4 guys, 2 guys, 2 girls, did very well. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the mentorship. I enjoyed having an influence on how they were going to be cops, and try to teach them how to do it the right way, you know. So that was probably my most enjoyable part. And then once that was over, I went to midnights, and I was a midnight platoon sergeant. And then I was a midnight condition sergeant. So, which was like, conditions was like anti-crime back then. You know, you were in plain clothes, you're out there, you know, doing quality of life and stuff like that. So, but 6 months after I get promoted, my APD is going to kick in. I'm going to be all over the place, guys, just warning you now. 6 months after I get promoted, lieutenant test pops up. So again, I do my thing. I study my ass off, and I do really well on lieutenant's test, where I have to wait until I have my 3 years as a sergeant. Actually, I think it's 5 years as a cop still, and 2 years as a sergeant before you can get promoted to lieutenant. I think that's what they changed. But anyway, it was 3 years as a sergeant to become lieutenant. So 6 months in, I take the test, because you only have to be a sergeant for 1 day to be eligible to take the next exam. I take the test. I do well. I score at the top of the exam again. So now I got to wait. I got to wait for my 3 years. And I'm doing my time. And shortly, let's say a few months before my scheduled promotion, I am working midnights in the 7-8. The 7-2 is a bordering command. Again, it's the midnights, less cars out there. We're always running into them on their heavy job. They're coming over on our heavy job, so you get to know the guys really well. One of the guys is getting married. So listen, it's the 90s. They're going to hang out, you know, in the parking lot and have a few beers after work to celebrate this guy leaving to go get married. So, hey, Ron, you want to stop by? Yeah. You know what? It's on my way home. I'll stop by. I'm on 3rd Avenue. I have my signal on to make the left. I'm like, you know what? I'm just tired tonight. I go back in the lane. I go to 3rd Avenue. I go home. That's the night that Joel Gray ran that family over on 3rd Avenue, if you remember. Do you remember that story?
Why don't you tell us about it? Why don't you tell the audience about it?
Yeah,
the story.
very sad story.
It's a very, very sad story. A lot of lives were obviously affected, ruined, tragic. So the guys had a few drinks in the parking lot. Some guys went home. Some guys continued the party and went to a gentleman's club on 2nd Avenue. And Joel stayed, and Joel had way, way too many. And Joel was heading home and didn't see a woman and her children crossing the street, and a child died. And so, you know, everybody obviously that was identified as being in the parking lot got modified, suspended. A rookie got fired that was there because he was on probation. Tragic story, you know. Well, listen, we all make our choices. We're all adults, but you know, I made the choice that night not to go. Had I gone and just even had one beer, you know, I'm a sergeant. I never would have got promoted to lieutenant, and that would have been the end of it. You know, that story was all over the news, and then kind of got buried because then 9/11 happened. You know, I was a sergeant in 7/8 during 9/11, and I was working midnights, and I was heading home after doing a midnight on the morning of September 11th. And I remember listening to 95.5 on the radio, on the Gowanus, the elevated portion. And I'm hearing about this plane that crashed into the Trade Center. They have people on the phone that are calling into the radio station that say they're above the fire. You know, they're being told to just stand still, blah, 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 blah. You're listening to it, you're like, oh, this is terrible. You know, this must be a bigger plane than the original little Cessna that everybody thought crashed in, you know. And then sure enough, in my periphery, I see the second plane coming across low. And I'm like, holy. And then you hear on the radio, oh my God, another plane just crashed. I got off at 2nd Avenue, turned around and went back to work immediately, knowing, you know, listen, we're under attack. And I wound up, you know, dealing with all that, you know.
Would they have you do, Ron, like for that? Like I remember my brother-in-law at the time, like he was at home on Staten Island, and I remember they just told him like go guard the Staten Island North Hospital University.
Yes, you know what? We weren't prepared. We absolutely listen. There was a patrol guide procedure. It wasn't Sims or whatever it is now. There was a patrol guide procedure about off-duty recall and mobilizations, and we absolutely did not follow it. Absolutely not. I came back in. My CO was there. He goes, Ron, you're my guy. Get on the phones. Get on the roster. Everybody's recalled. Everybody in. They were going over the radio, over the broadcasts. All police, all fire are recalled. When that's not what we're supposed to do. Because then, you know, a day and a half later, we had nobody to replace us. You know, so, you know, we learned the hard way, and I think the department is you know, wouldn't do that again. I don't think we would make that same mistake again. But yeah, I was in charge of bringing everybody in, rostering everybody up, and which was tough because, you know, I had to send 1 and 8 down to the Trade Center, and then when the buildings went down, it's like, oh my God, did I send these guys to their death? You know, it's emotional just thinking about it. You know, and you know, and they were close because they were in, you know, that tunnel from the FDR over to the West Side Highway, the West Side Highway. It goes underneath.
The battery, right?
The little tunnel, not the battery tunnel.
Not the battery.
Not the battery tunnel. That little tunnel where you lose all your reception and everything for 30 seconds when you're going from the FDR to the West Side.
Yes.
They actually wound up getting trapped in there when the tower went down. So they got the plume of smoke and everything, and they came back, you know, like you see on TV, all covered and everything else. But that was a scary time, you know, obviously, and you know, last thing you're thinking about is, oh, now my promotion got pushed back, you know. But I didn't have a day off for a month and a half. I had my first 2-day swing in BMOC, you know, which is the leadership school, you know, for lieutenants. After you got promoted, I got promoted in November, the end of November. And I was the first or maybe second class to get promoted after 9/11. I think they did a small class, and then they did my class, which was a pretty big class, because it was that whole group of the 5-year wonders. We did well on the first test, we did well on the second test, so a lot of us got promoted together all the way up to captain. So I go to BMOC my first day, and we sit down, and the plane crashes in the Rockaways. Like, oh my God, here we go again. You know, everybody thought that the plane got blown out of the air. Oh my God. So I was like, yeah, it's like, whew, I'll tell you. So I get promoted to lieutenant and go through the BMOC, then you get your wish list again. Now I had a friend whose wife worked in the chief of department's office, and she was going to hook me up. And I went to transit. I said, you know what? Let me go to transit. Let me, you know, not work so hard as what I thought, you know. And, you know, guys coming from patrol that know nothing about transit have, you know, have the wrong opinion of transit. I learned pretty quick. Really, really solid cops working in transit. And so I went to transit, District 32. Again, right there, off of Eastern Parkway and Carroll Street. Covered everything in Brooklyn, north and south, to the 7-5, all the way to the end of 7-2, through the 7-3, 7-7, you know, everywhere. But I knew nothing about transit, you know. And so I go there, and there's a midnight spot open, and I like midnights. So I wanted to be in the midnight platoon commander in transit. Another guy came there, he did the day tours, another city guy. You know, you learn quick. We didn't even have RMPs. I had my personal car on the sheet in case I had to run out to go anywhere. For those who don't know what on the sheet means, I had authorization to use my private car.
What were you driving?
I was driving a Pathfinder at the time, right? So I remember my first man under, right? I'm working, and I got 2 brand new city sergeants, right? Cops that came from the city, so they don't know anything about transit either. So I have no supervisors that know anything about transit, and I got a man under down at Flatbush Junction, right? And I'm like, oh crap! So I jump in my car, I grab the other sergeant, and said, let's go. We go. I left a cop on the desk, which you could do with transit. You could leave a cop on the desk in transit, right? So I left the cop on the desk. I went in my car with the sergeant who was on train patrol that night. You know, they have what's called a king car. That's the supervisor's car in transit. And then you have, you know, you're out in your boy car, whatever. And, but, so I shoot down there thinking, we're talking to them like, what the hell do? We don't know nothing. They had that place locked down. They knew exactly what they had to do. They knew exactly what information was needed. Pass numbers. I didn't know what a pass number is. It's like the transit authority workers tax number. Pass numbers, the train number, out of what yard, what time it left the yard, all this critical information that they need. I had no idea. They're sitting there, they got it all locked down. I'm like, oh, this is great. These guys are great. And I had a good time. I used to go out. We used to, plainclothes was different in transit. You spent a lot of time in the rooms looking through the peepholes, you know, for TOS and things like that. I used to go out with the plainclothes guys a lot as a lieutenant, and I used to ride the trains too, you know, because how are you going to learn if you don't do it yourself? And, you know, it was like I said, it was something that I hadn't done, I didn't know about. I had a piss poor impression of, and learned. And, you know, they listen, and again, they were setting their ways. They were setting their transit a little bit relaxed ways. I'm coming from city, a little more structured, I think, back then. And, you know, but we found our happy medium where we could get the job done and do what needs to get done. And, you know, I conformed somewhat to transit, and they conformed somewhat to Leyson, you know.
Ron,
But
I want to ask you. I just want to bring it back a little bit because I think this is great. You're at a pinnacle moment. You're a sergeant during 9/11. You got on the job in 1993. Much different time than now. So at that time, manpower was pretty high in comparison to now. Tell us about the morale, the camaraderie. What was it like during 9/11 when heroes were praised, cops were loved?
During
What was your
9/11,
impression? How did you feel?
or even before 9/11, you want to talk about morale, was totally different. Post 9/11 is a utopia. It's not even reality. The way that I'm going to say the world perceived us as the police and as first responders in general, because the fire department lost so many members. Even the iron workers, that were working down there. But I'll go back before that. Even as cops, I mean, we loved it, and we were getting paid dirt in the early 90s. Like barely scraping by. If you lived on your own like I did, it was tough. You're driving in a hoopty, it's getting fixed by the guy that's a mechanic that works, the cop that his nickname is Tools on the radio, because he knows what he's doing, and he's hooking you up by fixing your car for you because you can't afford to go to a real mechanic. I mean, but you played ball together. We used to go to ball games together. We used to hang out together. Off duty, we do, like I said, the 4-to-4s. A little more drinking than should maybe sometimes, but everybody was there. And I tell you, and like I said, in the 7-0 when I was a cop, strong cops, and they loved it, and they did it. We used to have, collar contests, where the sector teams would like, all right, in this time frame, say a month, 2 months, whatever it is, whoever's got the most collars, the other guy, they free at Peter Luger's. We're all going out to Peter Luger's, and that team doesn't have to pay because they have the most collars, and DATs didn't count. DATs and violations didn't count. They had to be real collars. We were doing verticals before the verticals were a thing. We would say, all right, after, who's got the latest meal? All right, after your meal, we're going to meet up. We're going to go. Who's going to go in the back? Who's going to go in the front? We're going to go home, and we're going to flush them down to you. We were doing these things before it was like this directed patrol and team-led enforcement stuff. The bosses weren't doing any of it. It was the cops. We were taking it upon ourselves. And the morale was really good. I mean, we all bitched and moaned about the contracts and not having a contract, and then getting lied to about the no zeros and the bonus check that we were all supposed to get. And that contract, was horrible. But the morale, I would say, was great. We always had each other's backs. Listen, you had shit bosses and you dealt with it. I think there was more leeway back then to actually hash it out in the garage, have a little conversation, whatever the case may be, little unofficial smoker, and you walked out and that's it. It's done, taken care of, it's addressed. Or you had other bosses that are like, you're not going to speak to me in that tone, and that's the end of it, and they're going to shut it down immediately. And okay. And then when you have those bosses that are really fucking just full of themselves because they were shit cops, so they're going to be worse bosses the higher they go, because they're full of themselves. They're not out for the betterment of the unit, of the group, whatever the case may be, the platoon, the squad, the command, the public, however you want to look at it. It was all about them and having to get their chest thumped and I'm the boss. Every time I had that, extra hour of studying. This guy pissed me off today. I'm going to study for an extra hour now. Because you know what? He's not going to be my boss forever. But as far as camaraderie, and in transit, they were even tighter. Because you know what? They did solo train patrol back then. There was guys that, not on the midnights, but there was guys that would go out there on solo train patrol. And they would have to take care of business, by themselves until they got some backup. And the radios did not connect with topside. So it was tough. So I had tight camaraderie. We had a lot of fun. I think that's where I learned to get the job done, but you can still have some fun. But come in and get the work done and get that job done. Post 9/11, I tell you, I can't not get emotional thinking about coming through the tunnel, going to ground zero, and having the people on West Street cheering for you just as you drive by, and you're sitting there, you're totally exhausted from doing 12 to 16 hours a day with no RDOs, sitting in the van, sitting in the car, slumped down, like, here we go, we're going again. Either you're going to the security detail, you know, or you're going down there to the bucket brigade, because we had hope for weeks that we were going to find people in some pocket somewhere. And seeing the people from all around the country with signs just cheering every time an RMP or a fire truck or an ambulance went by was just simply amazing, you know? And it was a very sad time because we all knew people that were gone, both from the police department, the fire department. So it was a very difficult time. And then working at ground zero, not knowing what we know now about the health implications, that's just another story. But, you know, being down there with our paper masks and just working on the pile, as we called it, and doing the bucket brigade. And like I said, for weeks having hope. And the hope never came. Nobody was ever found after the first day. And it was difficult, you know. But just think about morale. I mean, like I said, it was a different thing. It was like, all right, we survived. And, you know, we're in this together, and we got through this together. It showed the character of some people. I had an Army veteran. I believe he was Army. Forgive me if I got the wrong branch. He might have been a Marine, because he was in Virginia in what's the big camp in Virginia?
Quantico.
Quantico. He was in Quantico doing his weekend drill or whatever it was.
Marine.
So probably a Marine, right? Okay. So he made it to the command in 4 hours. 4 hours. He was in the command. From the time he left, he got permission to leave, to return to the NYPD. The military let him go. They released him from his duties for that weekend. 4 hours. He said there was nobody on this. He got stopped several times at borders because the roads were closed. That's when everything shut down. He just flew. NYPD, go. 4 hours. I had another police officer who was telling me he couldn't make it in because he was stuck in Bayonne, New Jersey. I'm like, God, he's like, the bridges are closed. I said, they're not closed to the police. Show your ID card and get in. No, they won't let me in. So that guy wound up with a foot post on a building that was listed as a Jewish sensitive location until he went in line of duty for his back. But they, you know, I mean, so again, it showed character of some and others, you know, who, you know, that one guy, 4 hours, let me get there. What can I do to help? My brothers and sisters are in need. And so it's hard to describe the morale because we were so depressed after it because of everything that happened. But we're uplifted by the community support, and nothing will ever be like that again. You know, I don't even think if we had another 9/11 type incident that we would have that support again. I just don't think that could possibly happen again. They'll still find fault in us. They'll still find a way to criticize us and blame us for something. But yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question, if my ADD kicked in and I went left when you wanted me to go right. But yeah, it's tough to describe that time frame, but accept the support. And I think everybody that was working at that time will say the same thing. I don't think anybody will tell you anything different. It was just amazing. And like I said, I get choked up thinking about just coming through and seeing that support, knowing what our task was, but coming through and seeing that support was very interesting, you know. But again, good people, working hard, bitching and moaning about the contract, but getting the job done. Getting the job done and doing what we had to do. And again, when I made lieutenant, 6 months after, captain's test. So I just hit it. I hit everything just right. And then so I take the test. I do well. So now I have to wait until I have my 2 years as a lieutenant to make captain. So right after my 10th anniversary, I'm going. Funny story. Again, it's not who I knew; it's who I knew that knew somebody that was going to hook me up, and I was going to go to Brooklyn South. And Joe Fox was the borough commander at the time. And it's funny because it's just before BMOC. It's the night before, and the assignments are going to be given out in the morning. And I'm locked. I'm going to Brooklyn South. Right? It's great. Not far from home. Brooklyn South. I've been in Brooklyn South, 7-0, 7-8, even transit. The assignments come out, Brooklyn North. What the? And then this buddy of mine just gives me this grin. He goes, "Hey, yeah, I showed up with a box of cigars for the chief department's lieutenant." And he got Brooklyn South. Al hooked me at the last minute. I'm on my way home that day. Yeah, on my way home that day. And I get a phone call. And he's like, "Hey, Ron." I'm like, "Yeah, how you doing?" He goes, "It's Joe Fox." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, sure, thanks." It's like, "No, really, it's Joe Fox. I just want to let you know, everything was all set. And, I got a phone call at the last minute. And, it's just the way things are sometimes. But I tell you, I talked to Joe Canine, who was the borough commander for SATCOM Brooklyn North. And I told him he's getting a really good guy." "All right, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks. Right? So I hang up. I'm like, these guys are just ruthless. They're just digging it to me now. Now they're calling me up pretending to be Joe Fox because I didn't get the spot, 20 minutes later, I get another phone call from a sergeant I know, and she's his driver. She goes, "You didn't think that was really him?" I'm like, "That was him?" She goes, "Yeah." He hung up the phone and goes, "He didn't think it was me." I'm like, "No, I thought it was the guys messing with me." He goes, No, he understood that. And he did. As soon as he got on the phone with you, he called up Joe Canine, and he told him, what happened. He was going to pick you up and this. So I go to Brooklyn North, and Joe Canine sits me down. I think I was the only captain that went to Brooklyn North, right? He sits me down. He goes, "So, Ron, Brooklyn North, we're very tight here." I go, "Yeah, I understand. I've heard that, yeah." He goes, "So this was your first choice, right?" Like testing me. Am I going to say, yeah? I go, "Absolutely. Actually, Chief, no disrespect. I was supposed to go to Brooklyn South. I got outhooked at the last minute. Here I am, but I'm here to work for you, So if I would have said, "Oh, yeah, of course," he's like, "That guy's full of shit," then I would have been done. Yeah, I was done with him anyway, because you had to be a made man with Joe Canine. You had to be in his inner circle, or it didn't matter, So from there, I now I start my executive jaunt, and again, now I'm a 10-year wonder. I go from being a 5-year wonder for sergeant to a 10-year wonder as a captain. So my first stop is PSA 2. I'm the XO in PSA 2 and the impact captain. Very interesting. So now I'm getting another view of housing and how housing cops work and everything else. And impact, for those who don't know, I know you guys know because you came on in the impact era, but for those listeners, impact is basically, cops are just put out in the high crime areas, and it's all about quality of life, numbers, suppressing crime, and just omnipresence. I think it was quite different in housing than it was, and I can say that from experience because later on I wound up being an impact commander in 2 patrol precincts. But in housing, I think it's totally different because of the demographics, because of the layout. When you're in patrol and you're in impact, you're linear on street. Mostly in commercial areas that are high crime areas. In housing, it's residential, it's housing. So these cops are not just walking around in the courtyards dealing with, shit. they're actually picking up and responding to jobs. So they're in impact, and they're handling the 52s, the domestics, the burglaries, the robberies. They're picking up jobs that city impact cops aren't dealing with on a regular basis. So I think they become a little more well-rounded as police officers coming out of impact than the patrol guys. Not because it was just a different mission, and they were getting exposed to a little bit more of a variety of police work than the cops that were out in pretty much the commercial districts of impact, mostly at night. Not that impact in housing wasn't at night, that was at night also, but they were going to jobs too. So it was a little bit different. So from PSA 2, I move on to the 7-3, because it was also SATCOM, Strategic and Tactical Command, Brooklyn North. That's when they were doing a test of putting the borough commander in charge of everything: narcotics, detectives, vice, everything, patrol, housing, transit, all fell under the borough commander of Brooklyn North, which was Joe Canine at the time. So he was in charge of all of that. So he could just move you all over. So one day, all right, Ron, you're going over to the 7-3. So now I was the XO and the impact captain in the 7-3. 7-3 it's 1 square mile, one of the more violent areas in the city. And the cops I had an impact, were really good. And they had a variety of both commercial and residential streets that they were covering with impact. So they were well-rounded and good cops too. A lot of good cops and good supervisors working in the 7-3. Not in the PSA 2. I had phenomenal cops. I had a crime team that was a gun magnets. They were gun magnets. Not better than you, Eric. All right, don't worry. But they were really good. Chris Devaney and his group. I'll give him a shout out. I'm not going to mention a lot of specific names, but Chris Devaney deserves a shout out as one of he was.
He's good. He's very good.
Yeah, he was the crime sergeant there, and then he became a lieutenant. And actually, I met up with him again in Queens North. But so anyway, so then I go to the 7-3. I'm the impact captain and the XO, doing both duties. So I had to do the traffic stuff. I had to do the quality of life stuff, plus all the impact stuff. So it was very tough and taxing. On top of doing the duties. As a duty captain. For those who don't know what a duty captain is, I think I'm the first executive on. The duty captain is a person that's designated to cover a specific geographical area. For the most part, it's the patrol borough. And anytime anybody says, "Oh shit," or what do I have to do, they call the duty captain. Or if they're also lazy and are trying to not be the boss, they're looking for you to make decisions for them. But that's another type of person. But that was my first experience with Comstat also, because as the XO in the 7-3, my boss went on vacation and I had to go to Comstat and cover the 7-3. And we just happened to be, I think it was, if I remember, it was 24 homicides versus 8. So we were up just slightly. And it was not a good time, I could tell you that, But that was my first experience with Comstat. And, it grew on me over the years because I did so many of them. But so from the 7-3, they were going to dissolve. They were dissolving SATCOM. They said it wasn't going to, they were going to move it on to Queens, and they decided to do away with it. I think we had administration change, and they were going to do away with it. So now they have to put everybody back. And it was insane. Everybody was just on paper transfers. There was nothing documented. They couldn't figure out where half the people were. It was hysterical. So again, I wasn't a Canine guy. So the way I describe it is I got put out with the SATCOM garbage and got put back in PSA 2. So now I'm working in housing, and I'm working for Chief Jaffe, which was an interesting thing because when I was there on the SATCOM, I had a mommy and a daddy. Jaffe was still the chief of housing, but Canine was the SATCOM CO. So it was a very tough yin and yang there. So now I go back, I'm in PSA 2. Jaffe is a very difficult person to work for. You smiling, Eric.
That's an understatement.
That's an understatement. I'm not a negative person. I'm not going to be negative. I'm not going to, I'm not going to speak ill of people for the most part. She was a very difficult person to work for. I was not her favorite. And at one point, she decided I needed to have some highway therapy. For those who don't know what highway therapy is, or shoestring therapy, basically you live here. Let's find out where he can work. How far does the arm stretch? So I wound up in Queens North, and I wound up in the 115 precinct. So that started a very long career in Queens North. I spent the majority of my executive career in enforcement in Queens North. So I wound up in the 115. I show up there. They already have 2 XOs. One XO was basically a CRV captain, which was a critical response. They used to send out people from every command, and they drive around in caravans with their lights and sirens on for high visibility and go to certain locations and just stand there. And all they would do is basically crash into each other because they're going fast in a caravan. And they would, for every night there was RMP accidents. It was ridiculous. So they had this one guy who was on punishments. He was the steady CRV captain. Now I'm saying, all right, now I got dumped out here. Am I going to be the new CRV captain, or am I going to be allowed to work? So Doug Ralston was the CO at the time. He wasn't in when I first got there. I was there for 2 days. I had nothing to do. So basically, I'm going through all the crime books and everything else. And when he came in, I sat down. He's talking to me, and I said, Inspector, I'm just noticing, I don't see a pattern here, but I see some very familiar looking robberies. This might be something you want to, put together. He's like, really? Like, didn't know what to think of me. He doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. I'd never worked in this borough before. I'm on this dump job. So luckily, he talks to Jim Tuller, who was the CO of Queens North at the time, and says, I think this guy's going to, let's give him a chance. So I was fortunate enough to be able to do my job. So I was the impact captain and the XO in the 115. I did that, which was interesting. Roosevelt Avenue, which everybody sees on the news now. But I had over 100 cops in my impact on 2 different tours, and it was mayhem. But I did that, and then from the 115, Chief Tuller brought me in. And so I guess that was 2006 I got there. And so Chief Tuller says, listen, I need you to do me a favor. I'm like, anything, Chief. You gave me a chance. Whatever you need. I need you to go to 111 and help out the CO. He's having a really hard time. The 111 was up like 25% in crime for the year. But they were dealing with minuscule numbers. So it was going to be tough to turn it around. I said, oh, okay. He goes, what, is there a problem? I go, I just don't know how to get there from Staten Island. The 111's in Bayside, private cars. XOs didn't have company cars at the time, but listen, I'll do whatever I need to do. So I went there, and this was like my first assignment where I was put someplace to try and it became a theme. I was put someplace to try and, fix something or to go there and help with a problem or whatever. They were up in crime. They were struggling. They had no XO. I needed to go there, put your mind to it, look at this, give me a view, help me out, help the CO out, and get things done. And we went there, and I went there. He gave me a lieutenant to come with me. We went there, and we were able to end the year up only 2% in crime. So we were able to turn it around, But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, because people didn't want to conform. But you have to do what you want. And like I've said in the past, listen, when you're the boss, you have to make the right decisions and the tough decisions, not the popular decisions. So you go in and you do what you have to do. So we took care of business there in 111. A lot of good people there again, some good bosses. As a matter of fact, the chief wanted me to go there. He goes, do you have any problem cutting somebody's head off? You know, going in there and making an example. I said, I have no problem if they deserve to be made an example of to go in there. I'm not going to go in and just say, you know, you, and then find something, you know? And so weeks gone by and he's calling me into his office. He goes, Ron, where's the name? I said, what name? He goes, the name of the boss that we're going to, you know, make an example of. I said, Chief, there's nobody. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, they're all doing what they're asked to be done. They're all doing what they're asked for. So I don't feel the need. And he was a little bit annoyed with me, you know, but I'm like, Chief, I just don't think it's right. If I had somebody that I'm asking to do something, or I had to change their assignment or change their tour to even things out because there were squads with nobody and squads with two sergeants, you know, it just made no sense sometimes. And if they fought you or they went there and they shut down or whatever, but nobody did that, you know. I said, so, you know, nobody stuck their head up. I'm not lopping their head off just for the sake of lopping their head off. So that was like the first time I kind of like, I guess, pushed back against the boss. But I just thought it was the right thing to do for the members at the command because they were doing what was being asked of them. You know, they were working hard. And, you know, it's funny, the crime team, and 111 crime team. I used to call them Team Izod. They'd come in and they had their Izod shirts on and their penny loafers and, you know, they're going out. It was a fun time. But so from the 111, as Chief Tuller is leaving, he says, all right, Ron, I appreciate what you did for me. The spot over in the Borough Crime Blast Unit, which is the burglary, larceny, apprehension, suppression team, is open and I want to put you there. Would you want that? I said, absolutely. Those guys are great. Yeah, because I dealt with them because I had burglary problems in the 111, you know? So I get put there and Chief Pizzuti comes in. And then they're like, you know, it was one of those things where the move was made as he was walking out the door. So downtown was leery. You know, is he the right guy? Is he just taking care of his boy type of thing? So there was a little hesitation by Chief Pizzuti, but I wound up landing there. And I tell you, as an executive in an enforcement role, it had to be the most rewarding spot. These guys and girls were amazing at what they did. The old CO, as he left, he goes, Ron, the hardest thing you're going to have to do is to deal with the personalities because you're dealing with all these type A personalities. The work is going to get done. So I got there, I settled in, I got brought up to speed on the cases. They were having cases. And again, remember, this is a time when patrol didn't do these type of things. This unit was, you know, basically targeting burglars. The organized burglars and retail theft, organized retail theft. Because when they weren't doing burglaries, they were doing organized theft. It was the same guys. We were doing such cool shit with GPSs on the vehicles, following the vehicles, following them, literally following them and witnessing them breaking into houses, coming out with the satchel full of stuff or whatever, following them back to the 110 and pulling them over on a regular car stop and then ripping them out. But closing out some crazy cases. These guys and girls were phenomenal workers at what they did, doing the background checks on the cars and on the perps and their connections. And first time I saw them making connections with vehicles and who's connected to what vehicles through summonses and parking summonses and things like that. Like real detective work, but they were getting no detective credit for it, you know? Great group of people. I mean, and twice as the CO of that unit, I was brought up to the podium at Comstat to talk positive about how are your guys and girls so successful at what they do. And who gets that opportunity to go to the podium to talk positive and not just have to answer for things, you know? And, you know, a couple of things came out of it that was great. You know, I had an unlimited overtime budget. Unlimited. Chief of department gave me an unlimited budget. Every week I had to do a 49 that just logged the hours I was working on what cases. It was crazy, you know? And then also Chief Pulaski, who a lot of people really didn't care for, but very intelligent guy, loved the unit, loved what they were doing. He came out and worked out of my office one day just to thank the guys and talk to them and everything else, and said, give me a list. Give me a wish list. If you could dream about anything that you needed to make it easier to do what you're doing, write it down. We were sitting down for days just trying to make things up. Everything that we came up with, we got. He got us. He got us night vision goggles. Who on patrol has night vision goggles? Night vision goggles, GPS machines. We had a bait car. I don't want to call it a bait car, a surveillance car, where we had a Nissan, and in the headrest was a camera with a 24-hour DVR. We could go and park it on a block and do a surveillance, just drop the car off. Just phenomenal work. It actually, after I left, as I was there, that unit was starting to go citywide. They had us training people in other boroughs on what to do. And some people were totally against it because of the way we operated. But the results were just spoke for themselves. And then it actually morphed into what is now the Grand Larceny Division. So the blast teams got absorbed into the Grand Larceny Division. The Grand Larceny Division actually came from the blast unit, which originated with the guy from before me. But phenomenal work. And that's probably the first place that I learned, and I don't want to say I learned, but I had the ability. I felt that I had the ability to really help people's careers, because at that point I was able to highlight the work that was being done. I'm not a me guy. I never did the 49s. When we had these cases, I had to do 49s all the way up the chain, and 49s that were actually read, not just thrown to the side. People would actually read them because you get phone calls about them. And I would be in there, and I would say, under the direct supervision of Lieutenant Robert Radigan, the team did X, Y, and Z, giving him the credit for the work that he's doing. Yeah, I'm the ultimate responsibility as the CO of the unit. Good, I'm great. Bad, I suck. It's me. I take ownership of the unit. But I felt it was my job to promote their great work. And I had the ability to do that because I had so many high-level eyes looking at us. And so at that point, every 49. And every 49 I could do, I would do 49s even when people were like, hey, you don't need a 49 for that. I'm going to do one anyway. Because you know why? My thing was I wanted to get these guys promoted. And in patrol, nobody was getting promoted. Nobody was getting the money. And the money, to those who aren't NYPD, means, sergeants and lieutenants get special assignment pay, which is basically pay of the next rank higher. It's not a different rank. It's not a promotion. It is a promotion, but it's not a promotion in rank where the lieutenant special assignment has rank over a lieutenant. It's still the same civil service rank as a lieutenant, but you're being acknowledged with special assignment, which gives you actually more money, which helps, obviously. I think I was instrumental in getting both my lieutenant and my sergeant the money, which was unheard of back then. And also, Detective Shield started coming out, and also the ability to get my guys and girls into units that were investigatory, because these guys were getting cheated. They were doing all this work. They were doing more work than some detective squads and weren't getting any investigative time, because again, for those not in the NYPD, when you're in an investigative unit, 18 months after do 18 months in an investigative unit, you get promoted automatically if you successfully complete those 18 months to a detective, 3rd grade. Whereas in my unit, even though they're doing that, the most I can get them is a specialist shield, which is the same detective. It's still a detective, but it's not easy. It's not easy to do. It's very difficult to do to get the average cop a detective shield. We could talk about, that's another topic, about how a lot of people get their shields now, but and even then, but nobody really in patrol was getting them. It was really the specialized units and the people that worked in the bureaus and the boroughs and the chief's offices and things like that. But that I felt was my duty, was to get them promoted, whether it be physically promoted or promote their careers by having the ability to recommend them to investigatory units or specialized units, and that's where I started feeling the passion for that, and I think that carried through the rest of my executive career, where that was going to be one of my main goals. Was no matter where I go, what I do, I have to be the voice, because I'm the one that's being heard, good, bad, or indifferent. I have to be the voice for those that don't have the voice, and that's the cops that have the boots on the ground, as we always say, that are out there doing God's work, that are out there doing the mission. Listen, I may come up with the plan, whether that's a collaborative effort where I sit down with my supervisor, that's how I always did it, or some other people just come up with their own plan or use an old plan, dust it off, and reinstitute it. Who's the one that is actually doing the plan and executing the plan? And if it's not executed properly and it's not executed, the way it's laid out, you don't know if it was successful or not. So another thing I learned was it's very important to explain and let them know why they're doing it, not just tell them to do it. If they understand why they're doing something, they're a lot more apt to actually go out and do it and get the job done and accomplish that mission, whatever it is. And also, it gives me the ability to evaluate whether the plan's working. And if not, we got to adjust it. We got to tweak it. We got to change it. So that's the first spot where I think that I was assigned, and I had the ability to have a really good positive impact on the people that work for me. I always tried to make the lives easier, lives better, be realistic, be very insistent on my subordinate supervisors that you can't take things personal, you can't make things personal. If somebody does something wrong and they need to be disciplined, they need to be disciplined. But that doesn't mean they have to come to work looking over their shoulder every day. Correct whatever mistake was made and move on. If they make the mistake again, then we take it to the next level. But you can't just, have a hard on for somebody and just keep after them, because that's no way for anybody to come to work, have them look over their shoulder every day. Yeah, everybody makes mistakes. I make plenty of mistakes in my career. I made some mistakes that some people held against me for a long time, and other mistakes where people let me, learn from them and move on. So I think that was an important thing. So from there, I get assigned to the Queens North Task Force. Bobby Bonafati, who was a fixture there, he was the task force commander for the longest time. Staple in Queens North, everybody knew him. Old school boss, very well in shape, good guy. His guys would do anything for them. They go to the wall for him. But the unit was basically, the task force unit was a DWI unit, and that's all that was asked from them. And their big, claim to fame was every time we go to traffic stat, they had more DWI arrests than Highway 3. The task force unit. That was a big thing. But again, that's all they were really tasked for. They weren't asked to do more and then only came in with DWI arrests. So I was sent there and asked, Ron, you got to go there, and we need the task force to go into the commands that are suffering in crime and help out with the quality of life. So I had to go there, and I had to have a cultural shift. I had to take these guys away from what they've been doing for years and say, listen, this is the new mission, and this is what we have to do. And again, I think we were very successful because the fact that I didn't just tell them, go out and do this, go out and get me summonses, get me C summonses now, and get me B summonses now, and go in there and make collars. And no, listen, we got to go and we're going to help. We're a supplement. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go here and we're going to help. So I did that. And then I had stories and stories, but, I had a good time. I wasn't getting the command. And for whatever reason, Ray Kelly was the PC. Ray Kelly had a misimpression of me about an incident that happened that I was accused of that was totally false and unfounded, and nothing ever came of it. But it was in his head. So I really wasn't getting anything. And so Jimmy Hall was the chief of patrol. And what I found out later was that he went into Kelly and said, listen, even if what happened was true, look what he's done for the last 8 years. and he got me to 111. So one day, it's funny because the task force building in Queens North didn't even have a finance machine. So you didn't get the finance messages. They got faxed over to you from the borough on the fax machine after the fact, you know? And the finance machine is, for those who don't know, again, is a machine where all the teletypes come down of all the information of what's going on, all the transfers, retirements, deaths, everything else, right? So then I get a phone call. Hey, Ron, congratulations. What are you talking about? Oh, you're going to the 111. What are you talking about? I'm going back to the 111? No, you're the CO of the 111, effective Monday. I'm like, what are you talking about? Send it to me. You know, somebody had to fax it to me because I didn't get a phone call. Nobody ever told me. And, you know, I got a phone call because somebody in a command saw the finest and gave me a buzz. So I wound up getting the 111, going back to the 111 as the CO, and did some time there in the 111 as the CO. They were already familiar with me, so it was an easy transition because it was only a few years ago that I was there. Not a high turnover in the 111. You know, some new cops coming in, but not a high turnover because who wants to leave? You know, it's Nassau County West. You know, it's right over the border. Everybody wants to work in the 111. It's a slow command, you know. So it was an easy transition for me to go back there as the CO, you know, but to put my mark on things and do my thing. And I was only there for a year and a half as the CO. And then one of the toughest times, it was the night of our supervisors meeting. We used to always have, in January, we used to always have a supervisors dinner. And I always said, let's do it after the holidays, after the hustle and bustle, supervisors to get there, have one nice night, right? So we get in the car. I get in the car. I'm going home. I'm not a drinker. So you know, I didn't have any drinks or anything like that. I'm heading home. I get a phone call from the command. Listen, what do we do? I think we may have a suicidal cop out in the field. What are you talking about? Now I got a fly sergeant on the desk because all the bosses. Oh no, I got a fly sergeant. I got a sergeant that was on the desk was a 111 sergeant. I got a fly sergeant on patrol, right? Because all the bosses went. A fly sergeant is a sergeant from another command that comes in to cover your command when you don't have the coverage. So the guy on the desk, they call me up. They're like, you know, I think we might have a suicide. What are you talking about? They tell me the name of the cop. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, seriously? Yeah, we got a call from his girlfriend that said, or his ex-girlfriend that said that, you know, he threatened to kill himself and may have put his gun in his mouth and everything. I said, okay, listen, this is what you're going to do. Call his partner on the cell phone and just have them 10-2. Don't raise them up. Don't tell them anything else. Just have them 10-2. As soon as they get there, tackle his ass and take his gun. You know, I mean, not literally, but basically, when he gets there, you take control of his firearm and let's work this out. Let's not let this guy harm himself. Unfortunately, somebody else, the girlfriend got in touch with somebody else that was in the command at the time. Information was given of who he was working with. That person reached out to that person, put him on the phone. They're at a job, literally at a job. The cop is outside the car. The cop that the girl got in touch with is sitting behind, you know, sitting in the car. He gets out, he's talking and arguing with her right behind the RMP. And the complainant comes out and he takes his gun out and eats his gun. He commits suicide on duty, in uniform, right there. Very, very difficult time, obviously. And I'm heading back in and I hear the 1013 come over. I beat my steering wheel. I bent my steering wheel. I was punching my steering wheel so hard. I bent my steering wheel. I was so frustrated. Like, how did this happen? Oh my God. They're calling for the bus. They're rushing the bus. You know, I raced right to the hospital. He's already pronounced. Very, very difficult time to go through that. But again, like I said, I'm the parent. So now it's my job to get the command through this, you know, in whatever way I could. And I always openly talked about suicide with cops. I talked at roll calls, not just at the holidays when you had to, when the borough said you had to. I used to always talk about it, you know, not chronically, like but it's not something I was afraid to talk openly about with the people. And, you know, so now I'm asked to speak and do a eulogy. Like, oh my God, how do you eulogize? You know, so now, you know, I talked to a friend of mine whose daughter had taken her life, and he's like, just celebrate his life. Find out the good things, celebrate his life. So I got, you know, we got to the funeral. We had to have Suffolk County on standby because the girlfriend and the family was threatening to come, and they wound up coming. I had to lock everybody in the friggin' church. It was a mess. But talk about, you know, the roller coaster of emotions sometimes, and the fact that people don't understand that the police, we're human, and even executives, we're human, right? So I'm a captain still, right? I'm a captain. We're talking about it's 2010. I got promoted in 2003, right? So we're talking about almost 8 years as a captain. Not thinking I'm getting promoted. I'm in the 111. It's nothing, right? It's not happening. Nobody in the 111 ever gets promoted. So now I'm at the funeral. We already had this incident now where Suffolk County was able to squash it. I was able to keep everybody inside so there wasn't a confrontation. I get my phone rings, and for some reason, like, we were on dinner break, and I was having a private moment up in the front. It was just me, and I was sitting in front of the casket, just having a reflection, because the cop, he was one of my conditions cops. We talked all the time. You guys know, you guys are anti-crime. You know, you have a different relationship with your boss. You know, you're always talking to them. You're always sitting down with them and going over things and everything else. It's a little bit, you're a little closer with your specialized units. And I'm just having a moment of reflection. For some reason, I didn't turn my phone off. I don't know. You always turn your phone off when you're at a funeral, right? My phone rings. I pick it up. I'm like, you know, hey, Captain Leyson. How you doing, Ron? It's Chief of Staff Wench. Now, the Chief of Staff is the highest, you know, he's like the number 2 guy for the police commissioner. He runs the police commissioner's office. So now I'm like, oh my God, the Chief of Staff is calling me. I start walking to this upper pew, you know, like a balcony, just to get some privacy in case anybody walked in. Because I know the only time that Wench calls a CO is when they get promoted. So now I'm like, I'm going from this very somber, personal, private moment to this high of, oh my God, I'm getting promoted. The Chief of Staff is on the phone. I'm like, you know, Chief, and he's actually not even a chief at the time. That was a civilian position. All right, Chief, just give me 1 second. I just want to get to a private spot. So I go up there and I sit down, and now I'm sitting there. I'm going, oh my God. He says, hey, Ron, I'm just calling because we heard there was an incident. You know? So now I'm from that low to that high, drop down again. You know? Because now, he's calling me because he's asking about the police commissioner about this incident, you know, with the family, you know, at the funeral, because, you know, employee management works for the police commissioner. So they must have told him, you know, called the office, told him what happened. So I explained to him what happened. He goes, all right, great job. You know, we heard that everything went well. We talked to Suffolk, everything's good, blah, 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 blah. He goes, by the way, I got some other news for you. The police commissioner is promoting you on Friday. I go, oh my God. I get emotional thinking about it because it was such an emotional roller coaster. And, you know, you're at that low, you hit that high, back down low again, and then you're getting promoted. And then I thank him, I hang up the phone, and a sergeant from employee relations was there, who I had worked with many times. And he goes, boss, are you okay? I go, yeah, I'm getting promoted on Friday, Mike. And he's like, wow, that's great. I'm like, it is great, but I can't tell anybody. He's like, what are you talking about? I go, Mike, it's about him, you know? And because we're on the balcony, so I'm pointing down to the casket. I'm like, I can't tell anybody. It's not about me. These next 2 days are about him and his family, you know? So it's like, it's a human emotional side that people don't see sometimes. You know, you always think, oh, the boss, he's got all the great, everything's great. The boss's life is great. The boss's life is, there's a lot of stresses. There's a lot of different emotions, you know? But that was so tough because Then I pulled my driver and my XO aside and just told them and said, listen, we're not going to mention it. We'll talk about it. When it comes down, they're going to find out. By 8 o'clock that night, because it went to 9 o'clock, by 8 o'clock that night, I started seeing this. You know, people looking at their phone, looking at me. The text started coming out because the finance message came down. Because, you know, it always comes down like the Wednesday before promotions, you know? So everybody's like, hey, you know, is it true? Is it true? I'm like, yeah. It's like, oh, congratulations, right? So I bring everybody downstairs. We're going to go do, it was a one-day wake all day. We're going to go do this final salute where we walk past the casket. And we're downstairs in the kitchen. And I remember telling everybody, listen, I know that you're all getting your notifications. You're all finding out. Yes, it's true. Thank you. But we're not going to, I appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you do that got me to this point. But we're going to go and we're going to take care of this. We're going to take care of this family. We're going to do what we got to do. And we did that. And we went up and we did our final salute. We buried him the next day. And the promotion was the day after. So we buried him on Thursday. Friday was the promotions. I'm leaving the cemetery and I get the phone call. Hey, Ron, what are you hearing? The chief, it was a chief in the chief of department's office, who I was, you know, I had become friendly with, Mike Quinn. What are you hearing? I'm not hearing anything, chief. He goes, all right, you should be getting a phone call. Chief, what are you talking about, chief? I already got the phone call from the chief of staff. I know I'm getting promoted. It came down. He goes, yeah, I know. You didn't hear anything else? No. Chief, you're killing me, chief. Chief, I just left the funeral. We just buried the cop. What's going on? He goes, you didn't hear? They're going to move you. I'm like, what? Yeah, where am I going? I can't tell you. Chief, you told me this much. Tell me where I'm going. You know? And he tells me you're going to the 110. So now I get off the phone and I'm in the car with my driver. And I'm like, I can't believe this. He goes, what? He goes, you're going to the 110. Because I'm getting promoted on Friday and I'm transferred as of Monday. Now, remember what I said. I'm dad. It's my job to get them through this. So I to be honest, you know, we talk about, you know, the highs and lows of the job. That was like an emotional roller coaster right there, those few days. But one of the biggest regrets I have is not being there for the 111 in that immediate time after. And I had a fight with the borough commander because I shut the command down for a couple of days after it happened and for the funeral. And she's like, it's a suicide. We don't do that. I'm like, chief, it happened on the job. These guys responded. These guys threw him in the back of an R&P. These guys lived through it. It's different, you know? And, you know, she let me do it.
Ron, but what do you think about that though? Like, what do you think? Like, I we don't treat suicides like line of duties, and I'm not talking about financially. We could have that discussion on another topic, but I'm just talking about the way you did it. I mean, I think that's the right thing to do, regardless if he was on duty or not. I mean, it's traumatic. There's a lot of suicide. We just had an officer take his life this week in Queens also. And, you know, I'm sure all the people he worked with are just working.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think that was the proper way to handle it, the way that you handled it?
I think the way I handled it, not because I handled it, I think the way I handled it for that situation was the right way to handle it. I've had other officers commit suicide and you know, I've made accommodations, but not for the entire command, you know, for his squad, for people that I know he was close to, and bringing the right people into my office to have personal conversations of who else should I be looking at? Who else should I be looking out for? You know, employee relations obviously comes to the command and they offer their services and they'll talk to one or two people. The police don't open up as much as they should. So that's why I felt it was important that we as a family, as the 111 family, do it, support each other. It was a different situation though too, John, where, you know, in uniform at work, at a job, you know, in front of a complainant, who thought he was going to get shot because he took his gun out when the guy was standing there. But, you know, I think the situation was different in that situation. I don't want to lessen the fact of suicide and the stresses of the job that possibly lead towards it. But I think each situation is unique in itself. And do we do enough? We'll never do enough. I think we do a lot more now than we did even back then for help, for awareness. I know personally of cops that were suicidal that were put back to full duty. In the 111, I'll go back to the 111. I'll tell you, I had a cop who was getting badgered by a supervisor, and I didn't know about it. You know, it doesn't always get up to the boss. And this guy just was at his wit's end, and the lieutenant was taking him as a driver, and he's like, "What the? This guy's just going to torture me tonight." And another cop saw him standing by the bathroom across from the muster room, and saw him take his gun out of his holster and looking at it. He's looking at it. And he ran over, bear hugged him and pushed him into the bathroom and disarmed him, and then brought it to my attention. Then we got the guy the help that he needed. You know, he obviously at that point he's gonna, you know, he's gonna get put on restricted duty, lose his firearm, and get the necessary treatment. That cop wound up back full duty, which you never would have seen in the past. You know, you never would have seen that in the past. But that cop that saved his life, I have no doubt in my mind that cop saved his life. And I gave him a commander's day. I praised him. He got a lot of shit for that because, you know, some knuckleheads, you know, want to say, "Oh, you ratted him out. You couldn't just take care of it with the PBA and get him some help on the side." Absolutely not. This guy did what he's supposed to do. He fucking helped this cop. He saved this cop's life. And he did what he had to do. And then we did what we had to do. You know, I used to always tell people when I used to go in, you know, talking about suicide. And one of the things I used to always say, it's very difficult to pick up that phone and make a phone call when you think somebody needs help. And they don't want to talk to you. You go up to them, you try to offer them help. "Hey, is everything okay? You just don't seem right." You got to remember, we're in the car with these people. We're working with these people. We see them more than their family does a lot of the times. So you know when somebody's off most of the time, not always. There's times where I just scratch my head like, I never saw that coming, you know? And we all have, unfortunately, through the years. But you try to talk to them, and they're not giving in. They're not giving up that they're having issues, that they're being troubled, that they're you know, contemplating suicide. Like I know, Eric, you've talked about it when you went to Papa. You know, they changed it to where you actually come out and just outright say, "Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself?" We never would have said that in the past. Never. Right? But I've had situations where people have tried to help and just don't feel that they're getting through and don't know what to do. And my answer is always this. They're like, "Oh, but I'm going to lose my friend. He's not going to be my friend anymore. She's not going to be my friend anymore if I drop a log, if I make a phone call, because their career's not going to be the same. Their life's not going to be the same. But you're going to get them the help they want." And my line with that always was, would you rather lose the friendship, which you may? There may be people that just can't get over and feel that you ratted them out, you know, even though they got the help they needed and you know, got them past the dark time. Would you rather lose that friendship or lose that friend forever to suicide? You got to make that choice. I'd rather lose the friendship, but still have that person here to go on with their life and have a productive life. And that's how I used to try to make people understand why it's right to intervene when you have to. When you know, it's our job to look out for each other, no matter what rank you are, no matter what status you are, no matter anything. Even people outside the job, it's our job to intervene to help protect people from themselves sometimes. So again, long story because I'm long-winded, as you can tell. The job is doing a hell of a lot more with awareness. They're doing a lot more with getting outside help that the job knows nothing about, giving the availability to members of the service to get mental health crisis intervention and help with counseling or whatever the case may be from outside entities that have nothing to do with this job and do not and will not report back to this job. That's something that was never in the past. It always was, you go to psych services and now it's all official, right? You can't go to PAPA. You can only go to PAPA if you're not involved in discipline. That's another thing that people don't realize. If somebody's in a disciplinary process and they're feeling suicidal, they can't go to PAPA. They go to PAPA, but PAPA's going to refer them out. PAPA can't take them on as a quote unquote client, So, it's doing a lot more, but there's always more we could do. And again, the chief's view and my view differed. But again, that's because, again, I thought that the 111 family needed that. And we needed to get them through that. And like I said, that's probably one of the biggest regrets is that I wasn't there to see them through that difficult time. Because again, we buried them on Thursday. I got promoted on Friday. I was transferred on Monday. Again, I'm in the 110 instead of the 111. I'm, 10 miles away, but how much interaction did I actually have with them after that, And I wasn't there to guide them through. And when I say, when you're a supervisor, you're like a parent, you make the right decisions, not the popular decisions, but it's your job to nurture them at any rank. It's your job to nurture them, to make sure that they're doing the right thing and that their well-being is good. You can't do your job if your well-being isn't good. Well,
I love that you called the 111 precinct your 111 family, and I always say that it's the NYPD. Well, it's the internal pressures of the NYPD that really lead to issues, especially when it comes to suicide. It's not the external issues, in my opinion. It's actually the internal issues of the NYPD. But with that being said, I agree. It's come a long way, but there's a lot more to go. John and I did an episode about mental health. We've done X Spaces talk about mental health. We constantly have our finger on it. If you were a commissioner, if you were in a position to make an actual unit, how would you incentivize police officers or any rank to come forward? How would you incentivize them to actually admit, I have a problem, I want to hurt myself, I want to kill myself? That's something I learned at PAPA. You have to ask, do you want to kill yourself? You're absolutely right. But how do you incentivize these people to come forward that they're having issues? Because unfortunately, that stigma has not been removed yet. How do we get them to come forward so we actually help them?
I think that the job has done some of that. I don't know that you incentivize is the right word, because you don't want to reward. You're not going to reward them, but you're not going to. It's not going to be punitive, and you have to get it out that there is life after help, that there is possibility, not always, but there's a possibility of a prosperous career after a struggle. And I think that what the job did, and I'm kind of on board with what you guys think about a lot of the training with the videos and people just clicking them and then wait until they're over and then answering the questions, and you get 10 chances to answer the questions right, to pass them. But I did watch some, I did actually watch the videos when they were mandated, and they did make some videos of officers that came forward and made their stories public and talked about how they were going to kill themselves and who intervened and how they intervened and how the job treated them and how the job nurtured them and how they're now back full duty. I think people have to not be stigmatized as much. And the stigma doesn't come from people that have been through the process. The stigma comes from the crusty old people who, just talk a lot of crap, people that go through the process speak high of the process for the most part. Not all have good encounters and good, outcomes with the process. But it also depends on how much they're going to put into it. Well, mental health is a very tough. Like you guys had a whole podcast on it, and it wasn't enough. To cover everything. So me, still having quite a few commands and stuff to go on my executive career. This is a tough topic. I just thought bringing it up was important because it's probably the biggest regret, one of the biggest regrets, if not the biggest regret I had as an executive. And it surrounds both tragedy and accomplishment, because I was the first guy to ever get promoted out of the 111. Most guys had to do the 111, do two a couple of years, go to another command for a couple of years before they got promoted. And I was fortunate enough, I got promoted in the 111. So, that was a good thing. Plus thinking I was never going to get promoted because Kelly, wasn't going to promote me. But so that's why I brought it up. I didn't want to get into the whole thing. And again, I don't want to diminish the topic at all, because I'm passionate about it. And like I said, I even had a cop who became a sergeant, and he called me up out of the blue. I had his name in my phone for some reason, and it came up, and I'm like, oh, my department phone. I'm like, oh, why's this guy calling me? Hey, how you doing? Hey, Inspector, I just wanted to give you a call, and I just wanted to thank you because you were the only boss that ever used to come in and actually talk about suicide awareness and prevention, and it was obvious that you weren't just, checking off the box that this is what I had to do for my holiday integrity program and everything else, that you were passionate about it, you were speaking from the truth and from the heart. And it's something that I carry with me, and I, as a sergeant, speak to my platoon about. Did it get better than that? Did it get better than that?
That's great. I mean,
that's to me, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I took the good from a lot of different people that I worked for and worked with, even subordinates I learned from. I'm not because I'm the boss, a know-all. I learn from my subordinates all the time, but to hear that, and when you get those kinds of phone calls, it makes you feel pretty damn good, to be honest, because, he took something good from me and thought enough to actually reach out to me when I had absolutely zero contact with him. I was in Queens North. He's a sergeant in the 107 at the time, and he gave me a call, and I really didn't even remember him too much, and it took a minute to click where I knew him from, so, I think it's important. I think more people need to feel comfortable talking about it. It's a very uncomfortable topic, but I don't know that you can incentivize it, Eric. I don't know that you can incentivize it. And, but I think that you need to get the stigma destigmatized. How you do that, I'm not 100% sure. I know that they're working towards it. I know that those videos were impactful because they were real cops, real detectives that went through these struggles, came out good on the other side, and have a productive career to move on with. So I think that's important, and more things like that. I think take those guys in, give them a shield or whatever, and have them go and speak at roll calls. Have them personally, not just the videos.
I think the problem with the job is it's very impersonal. That's the thing. Like you said, that guy remembers you speaking to him, and not even speaking to him. You were just talking. You were human. You were there. And I don't even have an issue really with the training, but being on the computer, I just have an issue the way it's done, because it's like, I don't care. Get it done. I don't care how you do this training. Do it. So there's nobody there. There's no discussion. Like if they brought guys in once a month and they're like, all right, well, we're going to watch this video, guys. And then we're going to answer some questions on the computer. And then there's a human there. I think it's good. Cause like you said, I watched every one of those trainer videos. I took every one of those tests as they came out, but I was in a spot where I was able to do that. And I always thought back to, well, if I was on patrol and in whatever fashion, sergeant, cop, I'm not doing that. I'm not. I'm gonna just.
Well, you kind of had to, because they keep a tally, and you would come up as overdue, and then the training sergeant would break your horns, or the special ops, or the admiral lieutenant,
do it,
and they'd make you do it, but you're not doing it. You're doing it because you really have to, and what you're really doing is you're putting it on in the background. You're not really paying attention to it. That happens all the time, you know. And so I agree with you. And like this guy said to me, he's like, you came in and you could tell that you meant what you were saying, you know, and you were there. So yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things maybe is get those guys out to do roll calls, get them out on a circuit so that they're out there, and incentivize them because they're helping the others that need help, possibly, you know. So I think that's one way of maybe doing it. So
well, that's the key right there, right? It's coming from people. You have people that actually been in those situations to actually, excuse me, excuse me, to actually talk about it, someone to relate to. But an actual computer training, it feels like a checkbox. And I think that's what John's trying to say. It's just a checkbox CYA where there's no real intimate empathy and no one actually cares and there's no compassion. To I'm saying that someone has to be crying on your shoulder? No. But there needs to be real people to say, hey, I've been through this. I've reported it. Here was the outcome.
Right.
And I think that's what I mean by incentivizing. I think you put a great spin on it and incentivizing those people to actually tell their stories. And by removing that stigma so they can tell those stories. But you need real people. I think behind the computer really loses that ability to show, to relate to, and it's just a checkbox.
Yeah, no, I
love your career. You could go on. There's so much information. You as an executive, especially with the 111s, I love the fact that you call it a family. So in a leadership position, right? What do you look for as also leaders that are working for you as leadership qualities? What are the leadership qualities that you look for that you think are effective? What leadership styles, right? Because I take pride in leadership. What leadership styles did you find effective and did you feel were necessary for you and for your people?
Number one is work ethic. You got to have a work ethic. You got to care. You have to come in and you have to put an effort forward. It's not about you. It's not about what you can get out of a certain position. Like if I'm interviewing people for a spot, you could tell right away if the guy's looking for weekends off and 28 chart days. You know it. And then as opposed to the guy that's going to come in or the girl that's going to come in and they're going to tell me, what they're going to do to help the unit succeed, to help the command to succeed, to help the community to be a better place. That's what you have to have passion. You have to care. You have to have work ethic. Work ethic to me is number one, without a doubt. And there's a big difference. And I said this when we were having those leadership, seminars where we would close down the command to bring all the bosses together. But there's a big difference between a supervisor and a leader. You're a supervisor by virtue of your rank. You're a supervisor because you passed an exam and you're now a sergeant. You're now a lieutenant. You're now a captain because you passed the test or you passed 2 tests or 3 tests. It doesn't make you a good leader. A leader is somebody that people want to follow. A leader is somebody that will do the job, won't ask everybody to do things that they're not willing to do themselves or haven't done themselves. There are people that haven't had the most stellar enforcement career. That doesn't mean that they can't be a good leader of people in enforcement roles. If they surround themselves with the right team. And I can tell you that I've had this is a weird format for me because I'm talking about me. And I'm not a big talker about me. Like I said, I like to talk about the people. I didn't even get to you and your guys, Eric. I like to talk about the people that worked for me and the great work that they have done that made me successful. And
we appreciate it. This is an opportunity for you to memorialize your career. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. But I feel weird. I sit and I tell stories about what I did, but I kind of feel like it's what I did to help others, and to push others forward, because that's a big thing to me. And like I said, to be a leader is to have the ability to have people want to follow you and that will follow you, not aimlessly, not blindly follow you, because any supervisor can order somebody to do something. But like I said earlier, when you actually sit there and explain to people why they're doing it, they're like, sometimes they're just like that. You see the light go off. Oh, yeah. Now they're going to go out there and they're going to be a hard charger. They're going to go out and do it. Not because you told them, but because they know it's the right thing to do and they know it's going to have a positive effect. You know? And listen, and there are times in crisis when you have to just say, just do it. And you don't have time to explain it. You know? And there's ways of doing that too without being an asshole. You know? But
we'll back up
for
too. And hey, I did that at the end because I had to do this. You know what I mean? We were in a bad scene. Ron, let me ask you, because we want to pick your brain. You're the highest rank that's came on the podcast so far. First executive to come on the podcast. So shout out to you for being brave enough to come on here. Most people won't. Two questions I got for you. One, what do you believe is the main difference between the executive ranks and the rank and file, the lieutenant down, lieutenant, cop, detective, sergeant? What do you believe is that difference? And then what advice would you give to a young captain?
Oh, I have a lot of advice for young captains, and I used to actually mentor young captains. That was one of my things when I was at the borough. But the biggest difference between an executive and the non-executives, we'll say, because, you know, lieutenants and middle management, you know, but it's accountability. One of the biggest things is you're accountable for everything. Like I used to always say, you know, in a positive way, when I became a sergeant, I now had the ability to impact my 8 guys, my 10 guys, and have an influence on them. Some influence on the platoon, but there's 2 other sergeants in the platoon, at least, that have their own squads. But I have my squad. Now, when I became a lieutenant, I have the influence over a platoon where I can have that positive influence. I could have that direction, and they're supposed to do what I want them to do, but I'm going to have it in a positive way. And then as a captain now, depending on what your role is, it expands exponentially, depending on where you are. And then, like, when I was the Bronx Queens Housing Borough Commander, I oversaw 1,200 people, civilian in uniform. That's bigger than most police departments, you know? So I had the ability to impact a lot of lives and a lot of careers. And so I think accountability is the biggest difference, because you're called onto the carpet a lot more. Listen, when you're in the radio car, you're responsible for you and your partner. When you're a sergeant, you're responsible for you and your squad. When you're a lieutenant, you're responsible for you and your platoon, right? I used to tell my lieutenants all the time, you are the CO of your platoon. I'm not going to micromanage you. Here, this is the command's plan. Follow it as it needs be. Adapt as your platoon needs it to adapt. Nothing is specific to, you know, the midnight's not the same as the 4 to 12 is not the same as the daytimes. Everybody has different problems, different issues, different personnel issues, different command conditions, you know? So you're the CO of your platoon. Now is the XO. XO is a kind of fucked up spot, you know, because the XO, you're not the boss. You don't make personnel decisions. You don't make command decisions. And you kind of get bounced around a lot. The XO is a very young captain is very difficult to deal with. But I think that's the accountability aspect of it as an executive is the biggest change. Listen, the hardest adjustment is from cop to sergeant, and then from lieutenant to captain. Sergeant to lieutenant. Listen, when I studied for lieutenant, there were literally 4 procedures in the patrol guide that said lieutenant. That had lieutenant-specific duties. You know, there were 4, and you know, and a little bit in the admin guide. But now, when you become a captain, it's like you're responsible for it all and then some. You know, and then as you move up, you know, it gets your span of responsibility just increases. You know, and a lot of stress comes with that. A lot of stress comes with that, and you have to be able to manage that. So I don't know. I hope I answered that question about the subordinate part. As far as advice to young executives, when I used to talk to them, and I used to sit down and talk to them, and when they come into the borough, and I was never, I hope people didn't perceive me that way. I never wanted to be walk around, I am inspector, hear me roar. I don't, listen, that's not how it is. I'm the boss. We're going to do what needs to get done, but we don't have to, be always rigid. We can have some fun. We can laugh. We can joke. We can get the job done. As long as the job's getting done correctly, that's the most important thing. My biggest advice to young captains is that they, with that responsibility, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? The biggest responsibility as an executive is you now have a lot more influence on someone's career, both positive and negative. And people don't think about the positive. They think about the negative, because now you're the duty captain as a junior captain, right? You're going to go out there, you're the duty captain 3-4 times a month. You're responding to off-duty instances where, cops get involved in stuff, and the duty captain has to respond and has to, take a look at what happened and possibly make a duty status change. What I used to tell people is your decision on a duty status change is one of the biggest decisions in that member's career, in that member's life, possibly to that moment. Don't take it lightly. Don't take the easy way out. It's very easy, and I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times where they'll just modify a cop or sergeant or whoever because they can. If they get involved in an off-duty incident, 9 times out of 10, if you suggest to the chief, because you have to make a recommendation to the inspector, and it goes up to the duty chief, who makes the ultimate approval of your recommendation or disapproval. Captain, unless it's a must suspend situation and you're going to suspend somebody immediately on the scene for something, they don't make that decision. They make that recommendation to a chief through the inspector. So anyway, don't take the easy way out. It's so much easier for me to say, I'm going to go home tonight because I'm just going to modify this guy. Investigations or inspections is going to come, do a 49. They're going to get his guns. They're going to vouch for his guns, and let IAB follow it up, or investigations follow it up later with a full investigation. No, that guy's career is now put on limbo for possibly up to 2 years while this investigation pans out. And besides the negative strike on his record or her record, the lack of ability to make overtime, which could affect their home life, the lack of an ability to be promoted, the lack of an ability to move on in your career, to have to always, forever and ever answer when you go for any interview anywhere, why were you modified? Because it's on your record forever. Take the time to conduct the proper investigation. If you need investigations to come out and help you out, that's fine. They're under your direction. They're not the hounds. You're calling out the hounds. They come out and do what you tell them to do as the lead supervisor. Get all the facts and do what you can. I tell you, the PBA will tell you, if there was an off-duty incident, you want the Leyson to have the duty. And not because in any way, shape, or form did I shit can anything. No. But I took the time. I didn't take everybody's word as gospel. I look at the totality of the circumstances, unlike CCRB, right, Eric? I take totality of the circumstances into consideration when I make a decision and I make a recommendation. Listen, when you modify, the way I looked at it and the way I taught people, and I don't know if I was taught this way by any way specific or I just worked it out in my own head. When you modify somebody, what you're doing is basically, because as an executive, you got to remember you're a representation of the department and the city ultimately, right? So if I'm going to modify somebody, which means I'm going to take away their duty status as a full duty member of service, I'm going to take away their firearms and put them on desk duty until an investigation is concluded and they either get their stuff back or they get punitive, discipline. The reason to do that is because I can't conduct the proper investigation right now to a proper outcome where it's safe for this person to go forward in their full duty capacity. Basically, they shouldn't have their guns, right? That's why I'm modifying you, so that the investigative unit can do a deep dive. Most of the time, that's not the case, but you can get away with it because not many chiefs that aren't on the scene are going to say no because somebody got involved in a domestic dispute or somebody got involved in some kind of an off-duty incident with road rage or with, just because they're in a bar doesn't mean they were drunk, their fitness for duty, take that time to conduct a deep, proper investigation and give the member the benefit of the doubt. And if you can lay your head on the pillow at the end of the night, knowing that this cop isn't going to hurt somebody, or it's not a corruption issue, it's not an issue where they need to have their life turned upside down, because that's what you have to think about. Again, these are human beings we're dealing with. They're not just numbers, But again, if that's the case, then that's the case. It's just too easy to say, all right, we're going to modify and let IB, let investigations figure it out. I called once and the complainant didn't answer the phone, so I have to go with their initial story, whatever the case may be. No, how about we try again? How about we send investigations to their house and knock on their door? I don't care if they live in Nassau, whatever the case may be. Because remember, I was in Queens for almost 10 years, so I dealt with off duties in Long Island, But I think that's the biggest advice, is that don't take the shortcuts, don't take the easy way out. And the second advice, which is something that I learned the hard way, and it took me a long time, is the carrot's not there. Don't chase it. Don't chase the carrot. Don't sacrifice your family time. Make time for your family. You're gonna miss events. You're gonna miss time. You're gonna miss the crazy hours that you work and the days off that you're gonna miss. You're gonna miss school things. You're gonna miss sports things. You're gonna miss birthdays. You're gonna miss holidays. That comes with the job, and we understand it. But I dove in, neck deep, and lost sight. And so I think letting them know, I was chasing the carrot. There's no carrot. There's no carrot. It doesn't matter how hard, how long. I don't want to say how hard, because that's wrong. Because how hard you work does matter. But how long you work and how long you stay in the office, it's your effectiveness. It's what you can do while you're there. And when you have to be there, you have to be there. You have to understand that as executive, there's going to be a lot of long nights. It's just the way it is. There's long nights in preparation for meetings. There's long nights going to meetings in the community. There's details that you have to attend in your command, outside your command, in your borough, outside your borough, everywhere else. There's a lot of demands on executives. Don't put additional demands on yourself by thinking that it matters that you're there 24 hours a day. So those are the two biggest things that I would tell the junior executives.
I think that's a fantastic synopsis. I mean, I always say that leadership, and you talked about the qualities of leadership, I believe, is a skill that you learn along the way. There are some outliers, but I think the overwhelming majority, including myself, I believe I had some leadership potential within, born, but I think ultimately my leadership ability came from what I've learned from being self-read, reading numerous leadership books, and then of course a byproduct of actually acting out in leadership. So I do believe. Don't forget #EDM. That's right, EDM. Everything Marines, of course, absolutely. But with leadership, I think there's a skill and ability to manage people below you, but there's also a skill and to manage the people above you.
Oh yeah.
So, what were your expectations from the chief ranks when it came to the NYPD as far as flowing through the ranks? What were your expectations from the administration? Because I always say, John and I talk about this all the time, and I say when I hear people say the job sucks, well, I say, well, who is the job? And I always say the job is people. And I think the job is the upper echelon because they have the leverage and the ability to implement policy and procedure. So what were your expectations of the chief ranks when it comes to the administration, comes to the job? What are your expectations? I know you and I have spoken about this offline. And a lot of times you say the chiefs, sometimes they're compartmentalized. But what are your expectations for the chiefs as far as running the police department?
Well, listen, it's a paramilitary organization, right? So the administration, meaning the police commissioner, is supposed to be the number one in what their administration is going to look like and what their job is. And what I used to write, in my little Twitter bio when it was Twitter before I retired is, I used to have, I always want to leave a place better than when I got there, right? I want to improve. When I get there, I want to improve it. So when I leave, it's a little bit better, whether it's the community, it's the command logistics, it's the morale, whatever the case may be. I want it to be a little bit better when I leave. And I think that the police commissioner's job, right, is to make the police department better than it was when they got there, right? And so that comes with, again, building the right team. Again, I think I had a very successful career. I think that the majority of my success comes from an ability that I have to build the right team, to put the right people in the right seats on the bus, right? And, not everybody is meant for every position. I could like you, but that doesn't mean that you're good for what I'm looking for this. And what I always said when I interviewed, and I know I'm going down instead of up, but I'll get back up. When I interviewed anybody for any specialty positions, I used to tell them, listen, everything is permanently temporary. This spot may not work out for you. You may not work out for the spot. No harm. You give it your all, no harm, no foul. If you don't like it and it's not what you thought it was going to be, come and tell me that's the reason you want to leave. And I will put you back wherever you came from. I'm not going to harm you. I may not think that you're the right fit for this position, so I may remove you. But I'm not going to remove you in a punitive way unless you do something really stupid. And I'll put you back where you came from, right? You got to learn. You got to learn that you got to build the right team. So again, now the police commissioner's job is to build the right executive team, to put the right players in the right seats on the bus, right? So what is my expectation of the upper echelon of the police department is that they make the best decisions for the police department and the city of New York. Because again, once you're an executive, you're an agent of the city, and actually 2-star chiefs and above are technically city executives. They're not in the union, they're in a different union with the city. They're city executives. So the politics do come into play. We used to be able to be a lot more apolitical in the upper echelon. I think the upper echelon of the police department has become too political. I think that when I was up and coming, there was a lot of people in the police department that were the right people and that had our backs, that supported the cops, the men and women with the boots on the ground. That's a major thing for me, is that you have to support the people that are doing the job. If you give them a mission to do, they go out and accomplish that mission or attempt to accomplish that mission in good faith. You need to back them up 100%. People are going to make mistakes. There's 2 kinds of mistakes, right, Eric? Mistake of the mind, and mistake of the heart. Make a mistake of the mind, that means that you knew it was wrong, you did it anyway. And mistake of the heart means I was trying to do the right thing, I messed up. Okay? 2 different mistakes that have to be handled in different ways. But you have to make those conscious decisions to put the right people in the right spots. I think when I was coming up, when you guys were coming up, I think a lot of the right people were in the right spots doing the job for the right reason. Unfortunately, I think this is where you were kind of asking. I think unfortunately that hasn't been the case. Whether There's outside interference. There's more outside influence. There's always going to be outside influence. Every 3-star chief has to interview with the mayor before they get appointed. The mayor has to have the final yay and nay on 3-star chiefs. So that's a big thing. But it's your job to pick the right people. So if I'm picking somebody, they should get pushed through because I'm picking the right person. Again, I'm taking people with me when I move up the ranks. But I'm taking people with me, not because they're my drinking buddies, not because I'm friends with them. It's because they have helped me to accomplish my mission as I go along. So, that's not nepotism in the way that we talk about nepotism and the way you talk about nepotism on the show, because nepotism on the show is I'm just bringing my boys with me and I'm going to just give them a spot. But that's not the right spot for them. So shit's going haywire, So, I'm not pointing anybody out. I'm friends with a lot of people in the upper echelon of the department to this day. And not everybody's in the right seat on the bus. And that's the unfortunate thing. And, also, I think, let me have a negative on this. I want to keep everything positive. I think that
keep it in the past.
I think that when I was coming up, I think there was a lot more prestige and respect for the police department than there is today. I think that there was more people in the right places for the right reasons, doing the right thing. And listen, every administration came in and made moves. You knew if you took a position as a 3-star chief, you knew you were there until the next administration. You knew that they were going to put their own people in those positions. So you knew when you signed up, I signed up until the end of O'Neill's administration, Shea's administration, whatever the case may be, But I just think that and I'm not talking about the current administration or the previous, could you even call that administration? The last couple of administrations where, the right people weren't put in the right seats. And not all of them. There are some people that are absolutely doing the right thing in the right seats. But I just think that we kind of lost it, I just remember going to a promotion ceremony, which always was, the family came. It was a great day. You walked across the stage. You felt so proud. You got a little clap when your name got called, and you walked up and you saluted the police commissioner. You took your picture that you were never looking at the right camera, and you walked off the stage, right? And I remember being, as an executive, up front for a promotion, and all of a sudden, people started blowing those horns and noisemakers and hooting and hollering, and I'm like, what is this? And why is this being allowed? And the police commissioner starts laughing. It blew my mind. And from that administration on, I think that it's been a struggle because it's been quite the turnover. Don't forget that we went from Kelly to Bratton to Kelly, right? We had Safer in there for a little bit, right? And Kelly was there for 11 years. I think my earphones just went dead. You guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Your mic's a little, you're a little watery, so
Yeah,
your computer audio is probably picking it up.
Your mic definitely changed.
Yeah, your mic definitely changed, bro.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, don't worry about it. So
I think you're doing great. We got a great synopsis. I mean, Ron Leyson, you have a lot of experience. You came on the job. And not only that, you went through different decades. You came on the job in 1993, which is pre-9/11. And you were a police officer. And by the time you were a sergeant, transitioned to a lieutenant, there's a pinnacle point of 9/11. And you continue on as an executive going into the 2000s, 2010s. And then here you are, 2024. Things are far different, changed. And I think that ultimately what it comes down to is that the expectations of leadership, I don't think ever change. We evolve in technology, but the leadership qualities, the value doesn't really change. You know, what we expect from the people below us, the values, is the same as what we expect above us. That's why I said, you know, if I was in a position, what I expect from the chiefs is that they implement policy that's beneficial to the rank and file so that they can do their job effectively, show support, back them so that they can be effective in the street, have good camaraderie, good morale, and ultimately makes it better for public safety and weave them together. And I think that's where the politics are in it.
Yeah,
but I think
there's a lot of politics in it, and I think it's more political nowadays. You know, when I was, you know, I was a CO, like I said, I was a CO to 111, and I was a CO to 110. You know, I worked with the politicians. I worked with the local politicians. You know, you work with the politicians on the local level, and you know, you can't let them influence you to not do what's right, and you just got to do what's best for the community. You know, and you know, I even had, it's funny, I had a local state assemblyman who became a city council member, Democrats, obviously, right? They were trying to convince me to run for the seat in my community that was becoming vacant. And I was like, but you got to understand that I'm not a Democrat. You know, we never talk politics. You know, but you never realize that because we're both here for the right reason. We're both here for the betterment of the community. It's not about personal gain for me. It's not about it's mostly not personal gain for them, you know. But I just thought that was funny. It's like, you know, he's telling me to run for office, and I'm on a total different political spectrum. And I don't get into politics too much, you know, but it's just, I believe that there's a big political influence right now on this job, too much, you know. And obviously, with the mayor being a former executive in the NYPD, you know, he passed the test and attained the rank of captain. So he was a captain in the NYPD. So he had some knowledge of NYPD policy and procedure, and he says it. This is his department, you know. The commissioners run the agencies, he runs the commissioners, you know, is his quote, right? So, you know, I think it's gotten a little too intertwined, and we've lost the autonomy of a department where we as the NYPD are able to act in accordance with the law, in accordance with the city charter, to do our job to the best of our abilities, as led by the best of our agency. So I think, you know, losing that autonomy to be able to do that, again, not to do whatever we want, not to have free reign to go out and do whatever, but just take the best of the best, put them in the best positions to get the best result for the communities. You know, I think that's, you know, with that.
Yeah, it's a different. Listen, it's a different time too. You know, it's not the information age. That technology has really transformed policing. You know.
Oh my God, there weren't even cell phones when I was a cop.
Yeah, the inception of the body cell phones, where you couldn't contact your officers right away. It had to be through the radio. Then it comes in the body cameras. Now add in social media. I mean, the information age is a lot different. It's putting a lot of more pressure on everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Executives, on the cops, on everybody, like all the way down.
Yeah.
So what made you ultimately decide to wrap it up and retire?
All right. So just run through real quick. So like I said, I went from the 111 to the 110. Was a CO to 110. I did 3 years there. I went to Patrol Borough, Queens North, worked at the borough. Had a great time there. I worked for Chief Pizzuti for 9 years. She went to Chief of Personnel. She took me with her to be the executive officer of the Candidate Assessment Division, which could be another episode completely, where she asked me to transform the process, or help to transform the process, identify problems, and come up with solutions on how to change the process and make things better over there. And then when The 2-star chief left there, which again is another long story. And Chief Pollock came in. Lori Pollock was my CO. We had a great relationship. I had done a lot of the legwork to be able to present to her what changes I think needed to be changed. And she, did her due diligence and put her stamp on things, and changes were implemented. Some that I suggested, some that I didn't. When she was ready to move on, and she became the chief of crime control strategies, from that position, she went to the chief crime control strategies. So I thought, she asked me, do you want me to recommend you for the spot? You'll probably get made chief. I said, I had to think about it because it was such a tough place to work. Think about that. You're an inspector. You're being told, if you get the spot, you're going to make chief, and you got to think about it. But I said yes. But then there was a change in administrations again. There was change in the upper echelon. Chief Pizzuti retired, and a new chief of personnel came in. He put Ed Winsky in the spot. I know Ed from going through the ranks. We were in the academy together. He's a well-deserving guy. I was very glad it was him that got the spot. Disappointed that it wasn't me, but glad that he got the spot because I knew it was somebody that earned it. But I was asked. I made a decision that I have to move on because I'm not going to be able to move on. They're going to make him as an inspector to a chief. I have no room for movement. I need growth. I'm going to move on. That's when an opportunity came up. I went to be the Housing Borough Bronx Queens CO. I went back in the enforcement game. I did that. I was there for almost 3 years. That's where I met Eric and his people. I know we went long earlier, so we won't get into the stories. But what ultimately made me leave is that in March or April of 21, there was a double homicide in PSA 9. Postpartum woman brutally took the life of her 2 5-month-old twins. And so I was notified, and I was responding from home. And here's again, you're an executive, right? I got a car outside. That's why something big happens. It's going to be newsworthy. It's a big deal. I got to get over there. So I was heading there. As I'm heading there, I get a phone call from the CO. We're having some community unrest. Some of the family members showed up. It's starting to be a problem. I turn on my lights. I start going. En route to there, I get T-boned at an intersection. Hurt my back pretty bad. I need surgery for a 2-level fusion, but it's such a big surgery, and the risks, I don't know if they outweigh, not getting it done. But I suffered for a long time. I was out sick for 5 months. I lost my borough. I was taken care of by the Housing Bureau. I was put in a position of special operations in charge of pretty much community affairs and special projects for the Housing Bureau. But I never went back full duty. I came back. I fought. I wasn't one of these guys. I wanted to go back full duty. I expected to remain on this job for many, many years. I fought for a good year and a half to get back to full duty. Was never able to get back to full duty. Was basically told that I have to submit, for disability retirement, or they were gonna, submit for me. So I submitted. I was denied. Not to get into everything, but people think just because you got into an accident and you're a white shirt, that and I have a legitimate injury. I have several prominent surgeons saying that I need the surgery, but without the surgery, I was never approved for the disability. I felt that I couldn't go back full duty and do my job in the condition I was in, but I did improve my condition. I did have epidurals. I had lost weight, worked out to strengthen my core and my back and everything else. So could I have done it? I could have done it. And my wife really was pushing me to go back because she knows how much I love the job. But I had always said, and as corny as it sounds, that everybody's like, why are you still on the job? You're on the job 25 years. You're on the job now 30 years. Why are you still on the job? You're losing money. People don't understand that. That's another discussion, but you're losing money by staying on the job. You could be making more at home. I love the job, and that's not so much as a truthful statement anyway. But I always said I'm gonna leave this job when I feel that I can't make a difference anymore. As corny as it sounds, you know, but that's the truth. When I feel like, listen, I feel like it's not my job anymore. This isn't the job that I came into, that I came up in. I don't feel like I had the ability to affect the positive change that I always wanted to do. So I felt like I got to that pinnacle. You know, there were several times where I was supposed to get promoted, and you know, life happens, things happen, administrations change. You know, we could talk about the 3 or 4 times where I was told I was getting promoted and it didn't happen. You know, but it wasn't about that for me. It wasn't about chasing the carrot anymore. It wasn't about getting the star on my shoulder. I didn't need it. You know, it's not what it was about. It wasn't about self-promotion and how far can I get. Listen, if they offered me a spot and I knew that it would be a spot that I could do something in, but it wasn't going to happen. So I made the decision that, you know what, I got 2 young kids. I sacrificed a lot for my first 2 kids that are grown now by not being around, and that's not going to be the case anymore. So it was a combination of the fact that, you know, I have young kids that I know I can be there for now all the time, you know, and the fact that I don't think the job's the same. It's you know, sad to say, I don't think the job's the same, and I don't think I had the ability to make those changes that I was able to affect in the past. And that might be unfair to certain people, because again, the most rewarding part of this job was the ability to help others on the job and to advance their careers and to increase morale through little things as a note or an acknowledgement on my Twitter account for a job well done and things like that. So I was still making a change in that aspect, but now I was past that. So now where do I go? What do I do? And I just said, you know what? 30 years, let me enjoy it for now.
You know, before we wrap this up, I know John always likes to ask 2 questions to retirees before we wrap up. But before we get to that, I just want to ask you this. I mean, before I even ask, I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank you for 30 and a half years of service to the good city of New York. You got on the job in 1993. You've been through numerous decades. You had a vast amount of knowledge with the police department. You still do. We hear it when you're on X Spaces. We see it when you're on X, formerly Twitter, the conversations that we have. And I always, you know, I have to thank you, and I appreciate that you were my boss's boss, and you had an impact on my career. And I thank you for the gratitude that you showed when myself and my teams were getting illegal firearms. And I thank you also for actually having deep conversations about myself and career, and especially when I was in a pinnacle with the CCRB. So with that, I believe in retirement, every man needs significance and importance. So here you are in retirement. Of course, you talked about your children. And a lot of people have this idea that when you retire, it's almost like you're dead, or you should just be laying there getting strawberries. And I don't believe that. I believe that this should be a part of your story and not the whole story, right? We talk about timing. Timing's impeccable. You love the job. It's clearly that. You said you may have had more years to go. And John and I both love the job also. But timing works out in mysterious ways and put us on the map in this way that John and I have taken this path, and now you're on a different path. So for significance importance, obviously that's part of your story. What do you see yourself doing in retirement besides with your children? Do you see yourself taking up any hobbies? Do you see yourself doing any work? And if possible, I do have to ask you this, because right now Joe Fox is the designee with CCRB. If you had an opportunity to be a designee with CCRB, and I think you're the perfect candidate, you have a vast amount of knowledge doing anti-crime and executive all those years, would you take a position as a CCRB designee?
No, I would. That's something that I think I might, but I'm not political. I'm not somebody that's going to toe the line, you know. I was never afraid to speak my mind. When I started talking, some people be like, oh, shit, what's going to come out of that mouth? You know, we'd be in a group of white shirts with all different ranks, and he'd be like, "Oh no, what's he gonna say now?" And I could tell you some stories offline, but you know, I would not be a rubber stamp, without a doubt. If I felt I could make any kind of a difference with that, I would absolutely consider it. I mean, I've always said this. Hey, listen, I could pay my bills. I'm not struggling. As Juju would say, I'm enjoying my life of retirement on the backs of the taxpayers of the city, right? Yeah, has nothing to do with the money that I contributed into my pension fund, right? Or financial decisions that I made throughout my life. But whatever. I always said that I'm not going to leave this job to work. I found a calling, I'll say. I found a passion in my life with the police department. I found that I worked with amazing, amazing, amazing people throughout my career. I've had my ups and downs. I've had my bumps in the road. I've made my mistakes. I've learned from my mistakes. And that's one of the biggest things that I always say also is everybody's going to make mistakes. It's that you learn from the mistakes, you don't repeat them. That's the important thing. So I try to learn from my mistakes, and I'm imperfect. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I think I've learned from those mistakes, and it's made me a better person. I think it's knowing that I can make mistakes helps me to understand when other people make mistakes. So I always said, when I'm done, I'm done. Because why would I leave this job to work someplace else? Why would I leave this job to work someplace else? Everybody, the big joke, what are you going to do when you retire? I'm going to upgrade my sports package on my cable bill. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to take another job. I'm not chasing the carrot. I live by humble means, so to speak. I don't live an extravagant lifestyle. I don't want to live an extravagant lifestyle. Like I said, I can comfortably pay my bills. My kids don't want for anything, thank God. And I'm able to take care of them and family members, and that's all I care. I don't need to go out because I'm 30 years in the NYPD, 20 years as an executive, 25 years as a supervisor, with a resume of, like I said, overseeing 1,200 people in 2 different boroughs in a bureau. I could put all that on paper, make myself look like a wonder star that I'm not saying I am, and get a $200,000, $300,000 job somewhere in corporate security, right? Or something like that. Some people want to do that. Some people feel they need to work. I don't feel I need to work anymore. I did my 30 years. I did my time. It's my time now. 57 years old. It's my time to relax, enjoy what I've built over my 30-year career to accomplish the pension that I've accomplished in order to, like I said, just pay my bills. And I don't need that other job. I'm not gonna, I joke around, but is it really a joke? I go from a job where if I don't have anything on my calendar, I made my own schedule, right? Executives, if we don't have something on the calendar, we make our own schedules. That's one of the benefits. There's a lot of setbacks, a lot of drawbacks, but there's a lot of benefits to being an executive, right? You can make your own schedule as long as you don't have a meeting, you don't have an event, you don't have something going on. You don't have to be at work at a certain hour because of a certain crime pattern, whatever the case may be. I'm going to give up waking up in the morning if I have nothing on the calendar and go, I ain't going to work today. Because I had 2 years on the books, 3 years on the books, because I worked like a knucklehead for how many years, putting all that time on the books, to having to wake up and go to a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Not for me. Listen, I worked EMS before I did this. So my real careers have been, in uniform, in a certain structure, doing a certain thing. And I just feel like I've done it. I've earned my time to relax. If some kind of opportunity miraculously fell in my lap for something like that, where I felt like maybe I can make a difference, maybe I can make a change, I don't even know that my voice would even be heard in CCRB, but that's something I would consider, something like that.
And so Ron, we always ask everybody the same 2 questions. Every retired member of the service. 2 questions.
I already know what they are.
Well, I'm sure you know the questions, but just for the audience, for those that never heard this format before, would you come on the NYPD again at the time you came on when you were young? We bring you back at the time you came on. Would you come on the NYPD again? And then we follow it up with, would you come if you were young right now? Would you come on the NYPD right now?
Yes. No. Yes, I would. I would get on. I had, hate the cliche of the front row seat to the greatest show in the world, but it's the truth. The things that I've seen, the things that I've been able to do, besides, like I said, working with so many great people, standing on the field at Citi Field during the World Series, having the ability to be at Times Square. I know you were down there with me one year, John. To have that front row seat and be right there and have all access to certain things, because you're there working.
John has fond memories of you there, by the way.
But I had a great time. I loved the job. I loved the people that I worked with, that worked for me, that I worked for the most part. It was an enjoyable experience. It was a great ride. But the time has come. I would not give up that experience for anything. But in today's climate, in today's NYPD, in today's city council, in today's CCRB, in today's, state assembly, the defund the police movement, the, legislation that's come out, that's I don't want to say anti-police. I hate to use negatives, but, that work against the common good, I feel, and that work against the ability for the good police officers to do their job and get the job accomplished, to keep the community safe. It isn't there. When I was a cop, you had the support of your bosses, the administration, and the government, and you just don't have it anymore. And it's sad. It saddens me, and I hope in the next 4 years that some of it can come back. It can't all come back. It's gonna. We're deep. We're deep. And listen, I'm not saying, we're not going to start getting into, the policies and everything else. But yeah, the short answer is no. I wouldn't come on. I wouldn't recommend it's not something that I would encourage other people to do either, unfortunately, which is sad because it's something that I lived and I loved for 30 years.
Well, absolutely. Listen, any last words that you'd love to tell the public? I want to thank you. It takes a lot of guts to come on this podcast or any podcast to open up and tell your life story, memorialize your career. And I want to tell you, first of all, I'm extremely impressed that you were open about your education and that, that you dropped out of school and you got your GED and how far you came with the job. And I just want to say, this is just a tidbit I want to add. To me, I have a college degree, but I can tell you what, I've met some of the most intelligent people I've met with a vast amount of knowledge in life and life experience and just intelligent people are not college educated. Yeah. So I've had an experience of meeting college educated and not college educated people that dropped out, people self-read, and there's a vast amount of knowledge. So I want to say thank you for that because it's really not a measure of intelligence. And I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate working for you and having a friendship in retirement. And I wish you nothing but wellness and God bless and thank you.
Oh, thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And actually, one of the things I tried in candidate assessment was to do away with the 2-year college requirement and go with some sort of life experience credit, having established, jobs, not talking about just getting right out of college and jumping into the NYPD, but having some type of life experience credit in lieu of the college, like we do with the military. And, it just too much political blowback on it, and so it didn't go anywhere. But yeah, and advice. Listen, I did it the hard way, and yeah, I got on the job with a GED, but in order to get promoted, as you know, to each rank, you have to have a certain amount of credits. You have to have, 68 credits to get sergeant, 96 to get lieutenant, and you have to have a bachelor's degree in order to make captain. So I did that. I went, I got my GED to get on a job, and then I went through college, as I'm working full time and raising families. So I did it the hard way. So I recommend that you don't bang it all out, get it done, don't stop. Do it all when you can, when you're young, when you have that family support, and if financially tough as it is, just somehow find a way to do it and get it done. It's just good. When you hesitate, you lose, and that has to do with a lot of things. Especially with education. Like I said, I did it. I did it incrementally until I had to get my diploma. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't for a lack of intelligence. It was a lack of effort on my part. I was lazy when I was younger, and I don't deny that. And I suffered for it in the long run, but I think I'm a success story.
Absolutely. No, yeah, absolutely. Had a successful career, right? Yeah, absolutely. So listen, Rob, there's a lot we didn't get through, and we'd love to have you back on to go on. It would be literally a 5-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Through all of it. So, we'd love to have you come back on, definitely. I know Eric has an interest in the hiring process. We could definitely do one on that, and then other just stories as they arise. So we appreciate you coming back on, and it's an honor, and I just want to thank you personally for being a friend to me and Eric, and honestly telling us what you like and what you don't like, and I respect that a lot, and I think that's why we get along so well, is because you tell it how you feel it, and I appreciate that.
It's the truth. It's listen. It's about different perspectives, right? Like I say on some of the spaces that we've done. I've joined you guys on a couple of spaces, and I say it all the time. I said, a podcast isn't a newscast. A podcast is you and Eric sitting here telling your perspective as NYPD lieutenants. Your life experience. Part of it is Eric being, in the Marines. No, it's seriousness. That's part of your story. That's part of your life. That's what's brought part of your perspective to the front. So you're telling your perspective as a United States Marine and a New York City police officer, sergeant, lieutenant. John, as a lieutenant, grew up, seeing both sides of it, hanging out and not making the smartest choices to turn it around to making good choices and doing what you do. And it's your perspective. It's not a wrong perspective. It's your perspective. My perspective is different. I have a different upbringing. I have a different path in this department. I have a different path as, different perspective as an executive. And I'm not going to, placate and say, oh yeah, you guys are the best. Bow down. I love you. I love you. Listen, I got on board with you guys in the very beginning, like I said, because I liked the fact that you were, going out there and you wanted to bring attention to the CCRB, Eric, and what it did to your career. And I know personally what it did to your career. We didn't get into it. Like you said, we could tell stories, but I have intimate knowledge on every one of your CCRBs. I've watched every one of your body cameras. I could tell stories about your CCRBs. I know that you're not full of shit and you're telling the truth, when you're talking about what you talk about. I know that firsthand from watching the videos, John, we didn't know each other really on the job, but, I'm listening to you and your struggles and your story and what you were put through and what the job put you through. And as an executive, I have different vantage of it. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm glad I had the accident when I had the accident, because I didn't have to be the one to give those letters out, because it would have been my job and it would have killed me. Because, that's, again, another podcast in itself. But, even when I was active and we talked, I gave you my perspective. And it is what it is. And I'll disagree with you. Eric jokes around. I think he's joking. He says that we disagree more than we agree. I don't agree with that statement at all, But we have a different perspective on things. I joke around that I feel like I'm the Democrat on the 5 sometimes with you guys. It doesn't make me wrong, right? I just have a different perspective on things, And that's what it's about. And you guys are very respectful about it. It never comes into an argument. We've even disagreed on not only just in the chats, but when you've done the spaces and lives. You know, we've had discussions, and you know, and I'll see your perspective, you'll see my perspective, and it may influence, it may not influence. But again, it's not a newscast, bro. It's not. People get all over your shit because you talk about things that are in the news. You're not making the news. You're reading the freaking article verbatim, and then you're putting your perspective on it. People don't like that. I'm sorry. I've always been one to voice my own opinion. I don't like to be negative. I don't like to highlight negative. So a lot of times I won't engage in negativity, but that's my perspective, and that's the way I deal with it. And like we know, certain things that I'm not a big fan of the memes. Whatever, it is what it is. They're funny as shit sometimes, but
some of them are good. Come on,
it's just not my thing. It's just not my thing. But I'm in a different place. I have a different perspective, and I also have not experienced what you guys have experienced in your path to where you are now. We'll leave it at that.
I appreciate it. I just want to say, listen, it's all good fun. I joke around about us disagreeing, but I enjoy that I really mean it when I say opposition meets opportunity. I learn from when people disagree and agree. I mean, sometimes, honestly, I laugh my ass off when it comes with John. Like, I know, when we discuss what we're doing for the podcast, because I know his perspective and I know mine. And I know already before I bring something up, if he's going to like it or he's not going to like it or vice versa. And I know what he's not going to like, but I do it anyway. I'm like, hey, John, what about this? I say, I know what your answer is going to be. And then we're like, we call each other stupid and idiot, and then we laugh about it.
Yeah, but listen, that's, what is it? And people watch because they want to hear what you have to say. Even Juju. Why is he on every day?
Yeah.
There's people that like your perspective, that don't like your perspective, but still want to hear your perspective because it's a perspective that they don't have. Whether they are members of the service and they're cops, so they don't have the lieutenant's perspective, or they're civilians and they don't have any police perspective. They're listening to your perspective. This is your show. If they don't want to watch it, don't watch it. It's a podcast. It's about sharing your life experience and your perspectives on things.
Yeah. And, and I think, listen, I say it a lot, the memes are not representative. They're not a good representative of the podcast because they're made to poke fun at something, and could they be taken as unprofessional? Yeah, they are. But I think they paint a very strong tale. And, I don't think it's the only reason that this podcast hated, but there's definitely a major factor. They go viral. People don't like it. People don't like the jokes, but they are all related. They're not pulled out of thin air. They're all
related. They're reactionary. I get it.
And it's it is a form of it's a form of jest. And I don't personally love them either. I'll be honest with you. I don't. Some of them I laugh my ass off. Some of them I literally cry. Some of them I don't love them that much. I don't. And but like I do think my favorite ones are the I think every one we do gets better and better. My favorite ones are the new line with
Trump
with the Make America Great Again. I think that's hysterical because it's exactly what's happening in the media. I
know. No, I get it. Listen, and again, that's just my personal thing. But it's your right to do it, and that's what people have to understand. It's your right. It's your right to do it. And oh well. Like I said, hey, listen, I'm the first executive to come on. You have other executives in your chat that I personally know that would be good guests, and I'll say it right here. I recommend them coming on, and they'll get a fair shake. I've worked with a couple of them. One I'm not going to mention. The other one has mentioned in the chat that he was a full bird. And listen, come on, share your experience. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. Listen, I'm not here to bash anybody. And just because I'm here, like you said, doesn't mean I agree with everything that you say and how you say it. And it's your opinion, your perspective. I have a different one because I led a different career, and I don't see things. And we could have other podcasts, and we could discuss, different views of, definitely we'll talk about the candidate assessment division. I know Eric is passionate about that, and I have a lot of knowledge about that. We could talk about, CompStat. We have different perspectives of CompStat. I stood at the podium under several administrations, and everyone is different. Everyone is different, and yet it's still the same. It's just, I just see things a little differently. And again, because I support you, I support your right to your version of the truth. Doesn't mean that I support everything that you say. Doesn't mean that I agree with everybody you disagree with, because I don't. And, and again, that's, listen, like you said, you wanted me to memorialize my career. Everybody that knows me knows I get long-winded, so they're not surprised at where we got and that we didn't even get through everything. It is what it is. Again, I love what you guys are doing. The fact that that you're the voice of the locker room, as you talked about. And I think got a little derailed for a little while, but that wasn't your fault. But you talk about what most guys in the locker room are talking about, and that's what you've always said. And you have the different perspective. You have the perspectives of the lieutenants that are out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot going on, that there's a lot of talk about negative things. And that's what was great about the lightheartedness of Friday's podcast when you did the movie review, and you guys went deep, bro. Whoa. I'm waiting for Siskel and Ebert. I got a dissertation on that movie.
Hey, we might be onto something. We might be Siskel and Ebert for police movies. I think we might have started a trend here.
Yeah, but
honestly, all kidding aside, thank you so much for memorializing your career. It does take guts. I really had a pleasure working with you. I have a pleasure, being your friend in retirement, and I appreciate that you were actually willing to support us and be our friend and put all the stuff aside. And I actually appreciate it more sometimes when you disagree with me, because I'm like, okay, he's giving me his honest opinion. He's not just telling me what I want to hear. And that's why I enjoy it. And that's why I love the relationship I have with John, because I know John's not going to tell me what I want to hear, and I'm not going to tell John what he wants to hear. We're honest with each other. But sometimes we agree. Sometimes like, dude, no, hell no. But it's great. It's real. It's real.
Exactly.
And you know what? That's it.
That's it. It's unfiltered.
That's it. That's it. That's it. People hate it, but honestly, 100%. Can't wait to have you back on. And and this really was the basis foundation of what the podcast was going to be. Just humanizing cops, who they are. Guys like it when we report things too, and we do that, and we put our own spin on it, and everyone has the opportunity to put their spin on what we're saying as well. And a lot of people say that, and I'm saying spin, but it's really just our opinion on it. It's
right. It's your perspective.
Required outcome by saying what we're saying. We're just saying what we think. And a lot of times most people don't agree with it, and that's fine. It's not a big.
Hashtag OMO.
Yeah.
I definitely did a T-shirt with all the hashtags, and then people could ask me what those hashtags mean. And I appreciate it.
There's too many of them, bro.
Oh, man.
Jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Go on, Prancer, Dancer, go on, get out of here.